Are we all here? I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Education to order. Public notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been given by the Board Secretary on May 6 and May 8, 2025 in the following manner. Posted notice on the school bulletin board at the Administration Building, transmitted to the Courier Post, Philadelphia Fire, County Clerk, Cherry Hill Township. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mrs. Sugars, will you please call the roll?
Dr. Braddock.
Here.
Mrs. Sherfain.
Here.
Dr. Dreisen.
Present remotely.
Mrs. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Greenbaum.
Here.
Mr. Mayor.
Here.
Ms. Palmer.
Here.
Ms. Stern.
Here.
Mrs. Winters.
Here. Thank you. We are going to start tonight with one of our favorite things. It's board recognition. We have some staff recognitions this evening. Dr. Morton, take it away.
Thank you very much, Ms. Winters. You are absolutely correct. It is one of our favorite things to have an opportunity to recognize the fantastic efforts of the faculty and staff that we have. We don't do this quite enough. We have to find ways to do this more often, but it's my pleasure to call up Mrs. Barati to come up to the microphone, and I'll be up in a second, and we will recognize outstanding efforts of a few staff members.
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. First, we have Dr. Neil Birdie. Dr. Birdie was named Visionary Secondary Principal of the Year by the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association for his time as principal at Carusi Middle School. He was also chosen as their selection of Principal of the Year for the National Association of Secondary School Principals. Now, Dr. Birdie serves as the Director of Secondary Education for Cherry Hill Public Schools. We congratulate him on this outstanding achievement and thank him for his years of service to Cherry Hill. Ms. Violetta Katsikas was named the 2023 Visionary Supervisor/Director of the Year by the New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association. We are excited to formally recognize her for this award this evening. She currently serves as the District Supervisor of Preschool and ESL. We thank her for her years of service to Cherry Hill. Next, we have Greg DeWolf, who was recently inducted into the New Jersey DECA Hall of Fame. He has dedicated 18 years to the organization. Currently, Mr. DeWolf is a business teacher at Cherry Hill High School East and serves as an advisor for the school's award-winning DECA chapter. We congratulate you on your outstanding achievement and thank you for your years of service to Cherry Hill. Eva Harbora was named the Camden County Council of Education Association's ESP of the Year. She currently serves as an educational assistant at Johnson Elementary School. She is the second Cherry Hill Schools employee in a row to receive this recognition. We congratulate you on your outstanding achievement and thank you for your years of service to Cherry Hill. And last, we have Rose Casey, who was named the 2024 Camden County Council of Education Association's ESP of the Year. Ms. Casey currently serves as an educational assistant at Beck Middle School, and she works with the middle school band. We congratulate you on your outstanding achievement and thank you for your years of service to Cherry Hill.
Thank you, everyone. We are so proud of you. And it's so amazing. We just had Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week last week, I believe. So it's really nice to roll it forward and recognize just a few of our outstanding teachers and staff here in Cherry Hill. We have so many of them who do such amazing work every single day for our students. So thank you so much. Moving on, we have two presentations this evening. The first one is a strategic planning process update by Hanover. So I am going to turn it over to them. They'll be joining us virtually, I believe.
First of all, are you able to hear me? All right,
Yes,
that's
we are.
good. That's a good start. And I'm going to try the next trick because just to share my screen. So we'll hope that that works as well. And while I'm doing that, appreciate you all having me here to join you in your meeting. And I love starting off with recognitions as a former lifelong educator. It's great to see people recognized for good work. Are you able to see my screen?
We are. Thank you.
All right, outstanding. So I'm Dr. Scott Ratchford. I'm a part of our advisory team here at Hanover. I'm joined by Carrie Melson, who is our relationship director, and appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the process that we've helped facilitate for the district. It's been a really engaged and passionate group of folks who've been involved with this process, and anything I can do to help provide information about the research that backs it, the stages of that process, and any questions you may have along the way. I'm really grateful to be able to speak with you all tonight. So let's see. So again, I'm part of a team. For those that don't know Hanover and our work, we've worked with the district since 2018. We work with partners large and small, everything from single schools to school districts to state departments of ed and counties across the nation. And each of our members works with a team of us. There are two of us who are part of our advisory services, myself and Dr. Susan Gold, Groundwater. And we also have a content director. Hanover at its heart is a research organization. We have a host of folks who have methodology expertise, and all that we do is grounded in deep research and analysis. And then, as I mentioned, I'm joined by our relationship director, Carrie Melson. That's the team that was working directly with Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill participates in a number of aspects of what Hanover can provide. As I said, we are first and foremost a research organization, and we provide a variety of types of research methodologies, as well as best practice documentation and access to white papers and research papers that are designed to guide best practice decision making. We also have our advisory services. I'm part of that team. We do everything from direct consultation with teams, as well as on-site workshops for capacity building. Strategic planning happens to be one of those venues, or one of those avenues, rather. We have an educator learning center, which is a digital platform for teachers. That is not something Cherry Hill is utilizing at the moment, but we have some districts that utilize our online platform for staff development. And then finally, we provide a digital set of resources, a huge library that we update on a regular basis, where we curate best practice research and offer that to all of our members. On the advisory side, strategic planning is a piece of what we do. I'm part of a team, and each of us on the team have areas of expertise and experience to support these aspects of what advisory capacity building looks like. Just so you know who's in the room with you and who's working with you, I have a 36-year career as a public educator. I was a teacher for a third of that, a school psychologist for about a third, then a building principal, and then did district leadership work, overseeing teaching and learning, family community partnership, and MTSS efforts for a variety of districts in New England. Now, to what I was asked to speak about, we have deep research that guides all of what we do with strategic planning and lessons learned. We try to offer the lessons learned, and having worked with a range of districts far and wide. And this sequence is one that we have really road tested rigorously. The first phase of it is to assess the current state, and that includes looking at organizational foundations. Those are the philosophies and values that drive and underpin the work of the district. What are the mission and the vision? Are they still aligned to what the community believes is important in the current day and leading into the next 3 to 5 years? We curate and analyze data that the district provides, and I'll get into a little bit more depth on the types of analyses, but it's a robust set of analyses to provide back to the committee so that they can look at the current state. Where are we right now? And then we move into establishing bigger priorities. What is it that the district and the data and the feedback from across the stakeholders points to as the important big buckets of work? Strategic planning is designed to narrow down to key leverage areas that are central to what the district believes it should be providing for students, families, and staff. So those first piece of work is around establishing those priorities. And then we drill into the data. We work with teams. It's recommended that there be a broad-based team that is comprised of a variety of stakeholders that I'll discuss later on, but that there be a broad team of educators, leaders, and community members, stakeholders who look at the data very closely to determine if we have a vision for what we would like for Cherry Hill. Where are we right now? What do our data point to in terms of areas of strength and that we can build upon? And where do we have areas of need and areas where we really need to look more deeply at practice and what we might be changing? And then finally, the next phase, once the strategic plan is drafted and there's been a process of vetting and feedback that includes the board and the community, various stakeholder groups, and it's finalized, in really helping to implement the strategic plan, which is a process unto itself, but important that it drive the work. I would be first to tell you that in many eras in education, strategic plans were built and then sat in binders around walls. That's not really the process that we try to establish. We try to work with the teams to ensure that it's a plan, it's a roadmap. And so communications planning, involving stakeholders from the schools themselves and helping to think about, we have these goals, what is it going to take to be able to deliver on those goals? And then finally, progress monitoring. Are we doing what we said to do? The research shows loud and clear that we need to make sure that the goals are well understood by all members of the staff and the leadership team, as well as the community, for accountability purposes, and that we hold ourselves to the goals and the KPIs that have been built. Just a little more depth on the kinds of research that supported this process. We recommend, again, a mixed methods set of research. The very first project that you see there, and I'll give you a little more depth on these momentarily, but is surveying leadership level folks about what's working, what's not working, and what should the priorities be over the next 3 to 5 years. And then I will actually jump to project 3 just as a point of comparison, because it's not just a survey of folks who are internal, but we recommend, and Cherry Hill followed the recommendation, that there be a survey of all stakeholder groups to get a clear understanding of what the community believes is important. And again, where there are areas that are working well and where there are areas that need to be re-examined, and really that the resources need to be reconsidered, the strategies need to be reconsidered. So that last survey, community engagement survey, includes families, it includes teaching staff, it includes students. It really tries to make sure that those voices are well represented. And in the center there, the strategic planning data analysis looks at all the outcome data that we in the schools are held accountable to, all the academic performance data, sliced and diced, so that it's available to be looked at to see by grade level, by year. Are we doing better by students with disabilities, students who are not under IEPs? All the ways in which that data might be analyzed. Outcome data for graduation, for discipline, all the major indicators are a part of that analysis. And our team provides a dashboard that allows the team in Cherry Hill to be able to dig in at whatever depth they need to be able to make decisions. And then in order for the strategic planning committee to really have the ability to quickly take a look at those data, we take we curate, we pull from the findings, just the high level findings to provide to the team. Of course, they have all data, but we want to make sure that people at a snapshot can get a look at what is the process, and this is project 6 next, what do the data point to in terms of big key findings. We provide both, but what we have found is if we only provide people with the raw data, that the process is very cumbersome and people have a difficult time getting to what the priorities ought to be, what the trends look like. So we help to pull some of those out and provide both. And then on project 5, sorry to jump around, but I'm trying to pair these in a way that makes sense. Community focus groups are a piece of what we do recommend. Not all of our districts and partners utilize focus groups, but in this case, Cherry Hill took the full best practice recommendation where you have survey data, which allows larger trends, but this adds voice. It allows the committee to have heard, and going forward for you all as a board and for school leaders and school staff to be able to say, here are some of the voices that speak to what these trends point to in the surveys themselves. Here's what one of our own students said. And again, we're always cautioning districts not to take a single voice and let it stand and represent the larger community, but where it represents trends, it's important to have that lived experience be presented in the work of the strategic planning committee. A little more depth around the different research projects and efforts. Again, I mentioned before that we provide a templated diagnostic survey for administrators and leadership level folks to respond to. And the outcomes there are analyzed so that we can provide trends as well as the raw data. The teams get both. We don't interpret, we provide really just the key findings. It's up to the folks on the ground. We help guide them to do the analysis. And so that it's authentically their own analyses and their own understanding of the context at Cherry Hill. The strategic planning data analysis, I think I hit before, but it's an in-depth quantitative analysis looking at 5-year trends for all the major outcome markers. And we take good care. You'll see there's an asterisk there to look at data in context. Impact of COVID has been an important piece that we've had to make sure that we don't overstate data that has come out of that COVID era, but we also want to look carefully at and guide folks to take care to look at it in context of pre-COVID and then post-COVID. Any curriculum changes that may have occurred, we try to make sure that we're aware of those that may impact data so that there's an authentic and honest look at the information that the team is using to be able to establish priorities and goals. I had talked about the community focus groups. We make sure that, again, part of the value we try to provide is we're an objective third party coming in to give people a platform and a forum to be able to offer honest and open dialogue. Part of the challenge that I know as a former leader and that we see in the research is that if internal folks are leading listening sessions, of course, we'll get honest feedback from some, but there'll always be others who may hold back. We try to make sure that we offer that third party objective opportunity for folks to be able to come in and really provide a forum for those voices. And then I'd spoken about the community engagement survey. It covers a range of topics, everything from academics to rigor to opportunities for students to participate in all aspects of school life, school climate. We really try to cover the gamut and take feedback from all those larger stakeholder groups so that that information is available to the teams who need to analyze it and make decisions for the strategic plan. We also then, again, provide a high-level infographic that's not designed to supplant the original data. It's designed to allow people to briefly look at high-level trends as they begin to think about priority setting and just to begin their work in thinking about how do we really streamline and focus our energies and our attentions on the key elements of what are going to drive change. We recommend, we've done lots of research on committee formation. And I will tell you that not so long ago, many districts built strategic plans with just teams of internal stakeholders and primarily leaders. They often were built by a superintendent and a small team. That is not best practice. This needs to be an opportunity for folks across the breadth of a community to weigh in. And so we recommend that it be a cross disciplinary and cross experiential stakeholder group. And Cherry Hill had a very diverse, I will be the first to say, a very diverse and broad community-based representation for the work. It was really a very passionate group. I just want to, we were giving you shout outs at the beginning of the meeting. This group really took the work on very seriously. It was definitely not an exercise that was designed just to complete a task. These were folks who were really committed. So it was wonderful to work with them. We have 3 workshops to be able to, we divide this work up. It's very heavy lifting for the folks involved. There were roughly 30 to 35 folks involved in each one of these sessions. The first session tends to be more heavy on community given the focus of the work. That very first workshop is designed to look at previous mission, vision, core values, and to examine and explore them again and to ask questions around, is this what we value in 2025? The world shifts quickly. Does it represent where we are and what we want for our children today and then going forward? And the recommendation is to evaluate the current core values, mission, and vision, not necessarily to replace. Some communities opt to keep in place or tweak, others opt to revise completely. But the work is really around looking at, we talked about organizational, foundational ideas. These are what the mission, vision, and core values represent. You had a board rep on that first meeting, and we had a wide variety of parents, students, as well as staff. It's a much broader based group of folks. Moving into the second and the third workshop, the first piece of that workshop, number 2, is designed to take some of that high level data, and it tends to be, in this case, it was a recommendation be that the shift be more professionals, representatives from the schools, representatives from leadership across the district, because it is about trying to now think about goal setting in a way that can be operationalized and really drive change, knowing the technical needs and the professional needs. And so initially, it's designed to have folks dig into the broad picture and the bigger trends in the data to establish those bigger priority areas. And that takes a fair amount of thinking as to what do we want to put our energies behind. These are those big buckets, and everything is going to hang off of those. The last part of the work, and it starts in the second half of that of that day 2 and continues into day 3, is beginning to really put pen to paper and take that data. Now we have the priority areas to establish and articulate directional change goals, and then much more refined goals that are measurable, that offer timeframes, that offer outcome measures that show growth over the next 5 years, as well as key performance indicators, so that there is clear understanding of what we're expecting change to look like in 5 years, how we're going to follow and track it, not wait for 5 years, but what key indicators are we going to track along the way to show if we're on track. Good strategic planning is designed to be fluid and flexible. There are 5-year markers that are meant to be aspirational and attainable, but we also recommend building in key performance indicators for benchmarking along the way to work with the Board of Education, work with the community, and to work internally to say, are we on track? So that there's ability to flex and pivot if, in fact, the strategies that are developed as part of this work are not moving in the direction that it is hoped for. The last piece, we serve as technical advisors. When there's drafts in place, when the community is interested in having it, we have a full team, look at the precision of language, look at quality of the goals. Are they designed in a way that can be measurable? Really serve as technical thought partners to be able to push and pull on, again, objectively push and pull on what's been written by the committee to ensure that we give clarity so that will drive the change and really frame that change. And in this case, the committee worked with us. They offered us several opportunities to push and pull on it. There have been a number of iterations that have gone back and forth to before it's gotten to the stage that you see you've seen recently. Just some terminology. We have a number of terms that we pull from best practice. Strategic priorities are just what I had been saying, which is a large statement of need and a vision of what it is that we will be focused on. It's that larger bucket. We recommend development of aims. Those are a broad statement that describes the desired state. It doesn't get into depth, but those are used to bootstrap into building goals. We would like to see X amount, not percentage. We would like to see a majority of students meet criteria for literacy, for example, would be an aim. By 2029 or 2030, we would like to see a greater number of students participate in our advanced placement classes. They're designed to be these statements that can be built off of to build goals. And then the goal setting is very much set up to use that SMART goal framework. We want to make sure that we push teams to, and this is part of the work. It's a challenging piece of work. This is where our thought partnership comes in. We push and pull on those goals till they're very clearly fitting the SMART criteria. Another piece that we recommend, because the districts build these strategic plans not in a vacuum, looking at existing goals is important. We had the team look at aligning the goals to board goals. Are they aligned? You all have given direction to the superintendent and their team. We don't want to end up with goals that are misaligned and that send people in varying directions. We want to make sure there's a synthesis and an integration of that. So we pushed on that as well. Key performance indicators. It's not just any metrics. What are those key metrics that are going to be tracked and aligned to each goal, so that there's clarity that teams can look at which are the most essential metrics that are going to tell us what's that light up dashboard that's going to tell us that we're on track or not. And then we recommend early work to identify strategies and actions that align to each of the goals, but that as a next phase involving folks on the ground to really take a look at if there's a broad set of literacy goals, for example, work with teams at the secondary level, and even further, there'd be a team at the high school level and at the middle or high schools that look at what does literacy success look like for high school students? How do these goals make sense at the middle school level? What is the meaning of them when we look at elementary and early literacy? That there be work done to take these goals and to really unpack them so that there are teams of folks who are going to do the work, helping to inform them, helping to communicate around them, and helping to enact the district's strategies and practices, and to ask for supports that are necessary to make sure that the plan is going to work. I promise you I won't go into each of the boxes here, but we try to serve as good thought partners, not just hit and run. We've been partners with the district, as I said, since 2018. We like to stay in and work with the teams to be able to offer guidance for working on the implementation and action plan. We have templates that we offer that include, not only do we look at the goals over 5 years, we rip them into 1 year goals. What's going to happen in year 1 of this plan? What's going to be a 6-month set of benchmarks? Who will be responsible for taking on various aspects of the plan? When individuals are named, our research shows that they're much more likely to be completed. We also recommend we use a Gantt chart. We recommend, is there a budget line item aligned to this? Are there resources aligned? What does the calendar allow us in terms of professional development? So we really try to serve as good partners to make sure that it's not just theory, but this is driving change in a meaningful and a productive way. We also offered the board members in the community some examples of some of the research that we have predicated the work on, as well as some plans that we've helped to build. If you're interested in looking at what some other partners that we have worked with have produced, we wanted to make sure you saw the kind of work that we do. And I'm happy to take questions. So I will pause sharing, and hopefully you can now see me. Can you see me? I can't see any of you yet, so
You look
how's
great.
that? All right, that seems to have worked. All right.
Thank you,
So
Dr.
again, I'm happy to take questions. I don't know how, Dr. Morton, Ms. Winter, how you would like to have the questions come to us, but you
Sure.
tell us. We're here to answer any questions that would be helpful.
Excellent. And before we move on to questions, I just want to acknowledge a former board member in the audience, Dr. Benjamin Rood, who was the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee. So he's here tonight to see the fruits of his work, even though he's no longer on the board. Thank you, Dr. Rood, for joining us. Board members, at this point, we are going to consider questions for Hanover regarding the strategic planning process. So members who have any questions about process-oriented issues.
Because I can see him, Dr. Dreisen. I
Dr.
can see your-
Dreisen, you can go first. There you go.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Winters. And Dr. Ratchford, first, I'm just speaking for myself, thank you to you and your team for all of the work that went into this. As I mentioned before joining the board, I think this is one of the things that got me most excited, and it's a privilege and a responsibility that we have an opportunity as a board to embark on this work. So just very grateful to you and your team for your help in this partnership. I had shared my questions in advance. I think for the purposes of time, I can cut them down from 4. I think, Mrs. Winters, I'll just try to consolidate them to 3 questions.
Sure.
The first gets to who, from your experience at Hanover, is the intended audience for a strategic plan? And just to give you some context on that question, I'm part of our C&I committee, and in our C&I committee this past week, we actually did have an interesting discussion where I think some individuals in the meeting were coming at this as a blueprint for the community, while others expressed just an understanding of it as a blueprint for the district staff. And I think making sure that we as a board are approaching the work with the same audience in mind will help inform all of our subsequent discussion.
Thank you for the question. It's such an important question. And the research points to, and our experience has guided districts to have the strategic plan ultimately lean internally because it needs to be one that drives change in a way that is understandable to educators and holds them accountable. That said, it also needs to be one that communicates to the community, to the board, what it is that the vision for success looks like. If it leans in any direction, it leans internal as the primary audience, but that does not exclude, and we spoke at length about the need to ensure that this is a document that doesn't just live internally, that the more we can announce to the community what a vision is, what our larger goals are, the more we can have them serve as accountability partners, and we owe the community an understanding of what it is that the strategic plan is up to. So if it were a graph or a pie chart, it leans toward internal as the primary audience, but it should never exclude the board, the community families should be able to pick the document up and have clarity about what the vision is for success over the next 5 years.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I understand it's a blend.
It is.
Next, and I'm not sure if it might be helpful to go back to the slides here.
I'm happy to if that's helpful.
They're process related, one on slide 6 and then the next on slide 11.
Okay, let me get back to that then, and I'll jump to those slides. Okay, slide 6, you said. Are you able to see that?
I can. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Again, from a process perspective, my question concerns initial work that's done, and we'll build on this on slide 11. How does that initial work, if it does at all, get refined by subsequent steps here in projects 2 and 3? For example, data analysis, community engagement surveys, community focus groups. Is work that's done earlier in the process, does Hanover typically see that work evolve and get refined over time? Or is it building on the work that was done, but leaving that initial work, as it was at that time in the process?
Thank you for the question. So the answer is that it really depends. So we recommend a multimodal, mixed methods set of research that include qualitative and quantitative research. There is a sequence we recommend. That said, with Cherry Hill and other communities with which we work, what can come from the first round of analyses may point to a need to go and change and refine some of we don't work with templates only. we customize all of our research. So if out of the strategic planning diagnostic survey, some information arose that pointed to the need to go and add more depth to, or an area to the community engagement survey, we would expand those questions, or we might tighten them to make them more specific and responsive to something that came out of that data. And likewise, with the data analysis, it points to the need to go into community focus groups with some questions that might be specifically culling from what was taken out of that research. So it's not a static process. It's designed to be one that ultimately gives the planning team, the strategic work team, the best data, the most insightful data. And so we adapt it as it moves if needed. It's pretty in-depth to begin with, but it is not meant to be static.
Okay, thank you. And that then, if we can go to slide 11 briefly.
Okay, let's see, slide 11. Yes.
This also gets to process, just to help understand from a board perspective, where does when and where does the board get involved? If, for example, if there are iterations on mission, vision, values, for example, or looking at workshop 2, when we look at priorities before goals, do some boards vote and align on those steps first so that the subsequent steps then build on that prior work? Or is it standard to, for the board to view everything in a collective whole, in which case, there might be different things, conversations happening simultaneously, where some board members are talking about core values, others are talking about priorities, and others are talking about goals. But if core values or priorities evolve or change, that might affect the goals. So I'm just trying to understand best practice in terms of process for board review of these different workshops and steps.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I most typically, what we recommend, let me start with what we recommend first, and this is based on lots of experience and practice, is that the board, of course, has oversight and responsibility, but ultimately more, I would sort of liken it to budget process, that there is a set of charges and that there is a process that is built and then presented. That's more typical. I'll tell you the primary reason that's the case is there has been some evidence to show, and there's some fear that where the board weighs in along the way, that it may affect the objectivity of the team. And because we want this to be a grassroots process, and never, of course, with the intention that it be moving outside of the board, but that there be a delivery of a drafted, community-based, team-based approach that is built as a draft. And our recommendation is that it be just that. You all have tremendous respect. I have tremendous respect for what a board does, and it is bringing forward a formed but not completed document that is designed to be pushed and pulled upon until it gets to the place where it represents not only what the committee has offered, but it now has the full seal of approval and endorsement from the board. So most typically it's at the end of the process. There are occasions where we have had some of our partners who want to pull in specific priority and goals because there's a historical reason, or there may be a budgetary reason, and pull them in and look at them and examine them. But our caution is that it can influence the members of the committee. And so we typically see that it's at the latter stages of plan presentation, plan development.
That's all really helpful. Thank you, Dr. Ratchford. And thank you, Ms. Winters. Those are my questions.
Thanks, Dr. Dreisen. Other board members, Ms. Palmer.
Thank you. Dr. Ratchford, again, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I'd like to understand a little bit more about the process of drafting the priorities themselves and what role. So it looks like the committee itself was responsible for identifying and drafting those priorities, or did they identify those priorities and then an internal team drafted? Can you just walk me through what that process looked like?
Yeah, sure. So the priority development is an internal process. We really worked very diligently to make sure that we are there just to facilitate. And with that, it is pulling in the information from the various aspects of the research. We hand that over to the teams to be able to look at when we think about there's some direct recommendations that come out of the leadership level and the community survey as to what should be prioritized. And then there's the data trends themselves. The teams look at each of those documents and each of those sets of data to be able to say, these are the larger buckets. That's the first phase of work that they're involved with. Our role is to ensure that it's comprehensive, that they're not missing something. We push on that piece. We also push on people to think about the way in which priorities are framed, but these are not our priorities. This is your community, and it is your team that builds those using the local data to be able to make those decisions. And so we are trying to serve as a conduit and as a facilitative team to be able to offer the right structural kind of advice. We offer feedback around language to make sure that it's the right language that you want to use, but it's only just objectively coming back from our team to say, is this pointed enough? Will it speak to Dr. Dreisen's question? Will it speak to the community and be clear? Or is it too technical? Because some of those bigger buckets, they need to be very, very crisp and clear, not only to the internal folks. The goals tend to be more precise and technical, but priorities and aims, they need to be more at the level where the community and anyone who picks it up says, this is what our leadership level folks in the schools have targeted for change in the next 5 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Braddock.
Thank you again, Dr. Ratchford. Kind of a big question, but in some ways kind of simple. I guess I'm looking ahead at I guess it would be the space between the goals and the KPIs. I wonder if you would share your experiences, if you have any advice about certain pitfalls to avoid in implementing some of the goals, or I guess generally where have some boards and some practitioners gone wrong in implementing their goals so we can try to avoid those pitfalls.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I will tell you that it is the place where the rubber hits the road, and building goals is hard work to do it honestly and to do it in a way that calls out it's difficult to look in the mirror and to really openly acknowledge areas of falling short and to set goals around it. But it's not as difficult as that next piece that you just identified. And so I would say one of the big recommendations is something I alluded to earlier, which is that there be a greater representation at this phase of teacher level and building leader level folks who can lay hands on those goals, and that there's a great care taken to looking at the phases that are called for change to occur. It's easy to leap to saying, we're going to provide professional development. But one of the cautions that we offer is you may want to check in with the folks who you want to provide that professional training for. What are the needs that they're identifying? Do a needs assessment. Sometimes that go slow to go fast approach is something that bears great, fruit in the end. So that's one piece of advice or maybe that's two pieces. Involve folks who are going to have to actually enact the change, both at a leadership level and a school level. And two, really ensure that there's great care taken to what the needs look like that are going to lead to the change. We even point to in our work of implementation, if we think about, I'll just use literacy because I brought it up before and because it's such a constant. If we need change in early literacy, the change that occurs has to first start with data. What is it that we see is working, what's not working? Secondly, there does need to be some needs assessment work done to be able to say, where do we fall short? What do people need? And we even recommend that it go to the level of saying, what do leadership level folks need in terms of support so that they are ready to provide quality supervision and oversight for their teachers? Has there been training considered that would allow for them to make sure they have what they need? They don't have expertise in every single aspect of school curricula, not necessarily. They may need some additional support. And then the last piece of advice is to take great care to think about what the competing priorities are and where to start. Because one of the great challenges I would say in strategic planning and in leadership in schools, whether board level or district or building level, there's always competing priorities. And one of the great drivers and reasons to do strategic planning is to narrow down to these key areas, but to go further when implementing and say, we have stacked up a set of needs for training, for example. Well, we only have a limited amount of time and resources available. What do we start with? What is the first step? That level of dialogue is hugely important. And then maybe one last piece, which is, I think there's a temptation, we're all feeling urgency. Anybody who's worked with education as a career and as a calling feels urgency. We've got young people right in front of us. But to be careful to say, not reach for the shiny object and say, because other districts around us or some article came out that said, go in this direction, really be careful to say, is this a line for Cherry Hill? Do we have a belief, a set that this is the right lever to pull? Not because it happens to be in a nice glimmering package, but because it really is the right fit for our students and our schools and our staff. So I guess those would be maybe 4 or 5 pieces of recommendation. But I would take good care to make sure there's a thoughtful team put together, just like was put together for the development of the strategic plan, to drive this and it be push and pull. There has to be discussion and debate to get to the level where there's clarity.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to just build off Dr. Braddock's question with my question because I think it's aligned. I'm interested in the space between strategic plan and the annual goal making process. I was gifted the opportunity last year to run goals for the board. I think it went better than it had previously, but maybe not as great as some people had hoped. So I really hope that having a 5-year plan set up is going to make the goals process make more sense, easier, more streamlined, and aligned ultimately with the district's vision. But I'm having trouble seeing that space. And as I was reviewing the draft, I kept saying to myself, how do I know what belongs in the strategic plan and what belongs in the annual goals? So can you just articulate a little bit about what that looks like, that streamlined process between the strategic plan and goals?
So in the ideal setting, in the ideal circumstance, there's a clear through line from board goals, strategic plan and board goals align A. There needs to be alignment. If there's a need for a revision or a need for additional elements to be added, that's the time to have that dialogue across the board and with the superintendent and their team. There may need to be some pieces that are recommended, but there should be clear alignment. If we're doing this well, this should prevent what can sometimes happen, which is splintering, and we see a variety of goals heading off in a variety of directions, which leads to confusion at all levels. Because I would say to you, the next piece is, with this plan built, there should be a clear through line to building level improvement goals that are built directly off of those 2 other pieces, the strategic plan and the board goals, so that that is in one of the strongest reasons to do this work, such that there is not a smattering of goals. Having been a former principal, what I can tell you happens sometimes is that each department and the board has a set of goals. There is some that come out of strategic plans. There are some that come out of departments. And if we're not careful, as schools receive those, principals receive those, they have 30 goals they're responsible for. That does not drive change. So the better there can be alignment among those elements, the more likely you are to see the resources used well. All who need to understand them well. They see that clear connection. And part of what we recommend is a strong communications process that ensures people understand, because not everyone was in the room to help build the plan. And so for it to work, there has to not only be alignment, there has to be effort given, space given for people to ask questions about it, understand it well, so that it isn't something that sits in a nice, pretty binder on a shelf or on a wall. It actually is a roadmap.
Thank you. And one other piece that I'm hoping is that we've had a lot of turnover on this board. It's that this provides consistency so that the annual goals don't just keep iterating year to year based on who's on the board, but that they follow the strategic plan going forward so that even though the board may change the vision for the district that was, and there may be modifications along the way, you know, but that the basis for what we're doing, because we're not going to see progress going forward unless we stick with something. If we keep changing everything year to year, we're never going to see any progress. So that's one of my hopes for this. Ms. Sherfain.
So I had a, a very similar question, and not to keep harping on the subject, but when you are describing that typically creating a strategic plan is based off of board goals, that kind of caught my attention because I almost thought it would be the other way around, that we base our annual goals off of our 5-year strategic plan. But I'm curious, I'm assuming when we're talking about board goals, we're talking about district goals, because that's okay, because that's been a topic of discussion recently too. But what is the reasoning behind creating a strategic plan off of current district goals if your vision for the next 5 years should be based off of your strategic plan? Or am I misunderstanding what you're saying?
I may have not been clear about that. So it really should be that the strategic plan is the core map. What I meant to say, and if it wasn't clear, is that there should be some tension to ensure that there is alignment at the district level and at the board level. There's alignment, and those priorities are clear. The goals are clear. If there's aspects of the strategic plan which need to be pushed and pulled upon, it is board responsibility to help to do that. But ultimately, this is a grassroots, but it should bubble up, not be a top-down kind of an effort, but they should inform each other, if that makes sense. I hope that's clearer.
Yeah, I think when you originally said it, I maybe just misunderstood what you were saying, but yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, sorry if I misspoke or if I wasn't clear. I hope that helps.
Ms. Gallagher.
Hi, thank you. So I guess my question kind of piggybacks off of Dr. Dreisen a little bit. So while you were discussing the process, and I understand that you don't want the board influencing kind of the direction of like the committees. I just kept finding that when I was reading the priorities and the data or the KPIs, goals, all that, as like when we received the first draft of the strategic plan, I just kept thinking like, I wonder what data or what survey information led to this decision. And so from my perspective, what I had trouble with and what I was kind of what Dr. Dreisen was talking about is curious if like you ever kind of like create these checkpoints along the way so that as you're presenting data information, the goals or the priorities are being like formulated, if that is ever more of like a broader conversation with the board in general, because coming from a perspective, it's like you're always looking to get buy-in,
right?
And sometimes I really kind of felt like this process, from my perspective, I'm only speaking for myself, lacked buy-in. And so it was just kind of like, here's a document, go for it. And I kind of would have liked to have maybe understand more of how it was going on at the time, to understand how the priorities were created prior to getting the documentation, because it was a lot to take in, not having maybe a lot of that like granular information. I don't know what my question is exactly, but I guess my question is like, do you ever see the benefit of creating checkpoints along the way for the board specifically, so that we do have an understanding? I'm not asking to dictate or be but just so that we can understand what's going on along the way, so that it isn't just here's 40 pages that we've kind of don't really have any context to. I'm just curious if you see the benefit in that. Because
I do understand your point, and I clearly see the desire and why you might want that. It isn't an either or. It is most common, and our recommendation is that there be some distance. How much distance and how much information? I understand your role, and again, I have great respect for the role of the board. There are some instances in which we have some of our partners who unpack the data or offer high-level review of the data itself along the way. The raw data and all of the reports that Hanover has provided are certainly available, and they would be the core elements that drove the decisions that were involved. We do have some occasions where there are reporting out to subcommittees. Again, with the caution that I had given before. And so it really is a local decision, but our recommendation is there be some space to allow that organic process, that unfettered process to lead to the most authentic plan as possible, knowing that it's going to get some push and pull from you all and other stakeholder groups before it ever reaches its final phase. So yes, we sometimes see people who offer updates. It's a variety of ways in which people approach it, with the caution being that we recommend there be, it's very, very much the case where we want to take good care to allow the committee to feel like they aren't being directed necessarily, and that's the big caution.
If I can just interject for a second as well, as Dr. Root is here, I think part of the challenge as well that maybe board members may be feeling is that we eliminated the strategic planning committee itself. That's where updates were taking place. And then, there were report outs at the larger board meetings as well. But since January, certainly that hasn't been in effect any longer. The raw data and survey reports, those things I had, sent in the weekly reports, but it's different when, the stakeholders have an opportunity over 3 days to process that information and develop priorities and things. That there are many discussions that go into helping to create that, and not having been a part of that or receive understanding, I can see how it'd be difficult to track those documents to what was actually developed. So,
Mr. Mayor.
So, Dr. Ratchford, thank you for the presentation. I also had initially some level of discomfort having been on strategic planning and like at least to some degree helping to bring Hanover in and make the decision to go forward with a strategic plan. So it was a little bit uncomfortable to not have a seat at the table up until somewhat more recently, but I'll say that your presentation explanation actually makes a lot of sense to me as I heard you talk about the importance from your perspective of having some distance and of not having or allowing the perception, at least, that maybe the board is controlling too much of the process. Makes sense to me now, especially from the perspective of the reality that our time as board members in these seats is fleeting. It's certainly much more fleeting than the time that the community members who worked so diligently on on the committee will be as members of the community for years and years, and that much our time here is more fleeting certainly than the careers and the lives of the students who will ultimately be influenced by where this strategic plan lands. So I was initially thought, well, do I really need to hear a presentation? We've gone through this. I know where we're going, and I'm happy to be part of it. But having you speak to the reasoning behind who was involved, when the board was involved, why we may not have been involved earlier, makes a lot of sense. It gives me that much more confidence. And I was particularly, happy to hear that you were satisfied with the community involvement, with the breadth of experience and different lived experiences that the community brought to your efforts. So, given all that, while it's still initially a little uncomfortable not to have had a seat at the table earlier, Thank you for explaining why that is, and you know, I look forward to helping move this forward in the future.
Thank you so much. And I will reiterate, I work with communities far and wide. And there are occasions where there are folks in the room who are, it looks like they're mechanically working through. This was a great group. It was a good cross section. Some of the great comments throughout that came from some of the young people in the room. There are some of the priorities that got reshaped because of community member comments. It was really a very healthy and robust conversation. And again, that's another factor that can get in the way, because I think we forget, those of us who are professional educators, folks coming in as parents and community members, there's a power differential and dynamic. This was a very open and ranging conversation throughout the three workshops. So thank you, first of all, for affirming that we were able to answer your questions. But secondly, I really want to say kudos to the folks who were involved.
Mrs. Sherfain.
I actually did have a couple more questions. They're all pretty straightforward and more process-based. My first question was, how did you develop the questions for the surveys that you disseminated, specifically to the leadership ones, but I guess to all of the surveys that you disseminated?
Thank you. Yeah, so those have grown over time. We have a we have a survey team who are survey methodologists who have dug into the core domains for leadership and for academic priorities, school priorities, and looked at best practices and tried to make sure that they're well represented, that the range is well represented in the survey, and that the survey has been road tested by dozens and dozens of partners over time, and it's evolved and changed. That said, we also shape those, to a question that was raised earlier, we shape those based on feedback and input from teams. So Dr. Morton and his team, if there were areas they wanted us to include, we will adapt those surveys. But there are some core areas that we want to make sure are looked at that are part and parcel of what schools are typically responsible for, what leadership typically manages based on research and best practice, that are then put together by our survey team so that they are well constructed and that allow you to get a depth of feedback and a range of feedback to guide some of the work. It's never one data point and it's never one survey, which is why we have the range of surveys and also the focus groups.
Thank you. You had made a comment about including individuals for accountability, and I believe you were talking about the implementation phase of this project. When, as far as where we are in the process, when do you see that being included in our plan?
So your timing, it doesn't always work out this way. When we first came on board, we had talked about an ideal timeline. You're about as close as you're going to get to an ideal timeline, in that assuming that the board and all folks who are ultimately going to endorse the final version of the plan get it to a finished state sometime over the next weeks or month. It is completed before the school year or as the school year is coming to an end. It's a great time to pull teams together to be able to plan for the following year. So we don't recommend a long period of time. We recommend that it occur pretty close to the completion of the plan itself. But an ideal opportunity is opened up in that summer is a great time at schools, and school leaders are involved in considering allocation of professional development time and resources. So pulling those teams together in the next month or two is a real ideal opportunity. I do know that school contracts for teachers make that a complication. And so trying to walk a line there, if there's the ability to have a good representation of both teaching staff and leadership staff, it is right after this process is complete. And ideally, to kick in year one, there's a informed process for first steps in level setting the need, first steps in training. I'm going to back that up. Communication is a huge piece, and then training, that are right on the heels of the completion of the plan.
Okay, so you kind of just answered my last question, but just to elaborate a little bit more, as far as where you see us in this process, would you say, because we just as a board just got the first draft and excuse me, worked through our committees to give our feedback. So where do you see us as far as completion of the full strategic plan?
It's a little difficult for me to say, not having seen the feedback from you all, but I would say, based on the last iteration that our team saw, the technical aspects and the content look solid. It's really at this point, taking feedback from you all and from other feedback from other stakeholders and being able to reshape any of the language, any of the benchmarks, any of the growth goals and adding additional layers if those are needed. I think you're pretty close, but I'd welcome the committee and the superintendent to share with us any feedback. We're happy to offer any technical support that you may need. I don't think you're far away from the finish line at all based on what we had seen, unless there are some radical shifts that are needed and radical surgery that's needed in the plan as we saw it last.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Ms. Gallagher.
So I think I know what I was trying to say. Because Mr. Mayor made a comment and it hit me. And I guess I kind of want to maybe push back a little. And I agree with what you're saying. I think I understand that there is an aspect of the board that needs to be arm's distance. However, we are the ones that have to vote on this plan and enact it, right? So I guess that is my level of lack of transparency and understanding. So yes, I understand that there needs to be like autonomy for the committee to do their job. However, there's also an element that like, then we have to then take that and then run with it. So if we are not at least a part of the process on some high level, like a 30,000 foot level, trying to understand the direction at which they're going, then, are we going to then implement, are we going to agree with the end result, first of all, right? Whatever is presented to us, which would be a colossal, I don't want to say waste of time, but it would be a lot of time and money and energy that could have been shifted in a way had there been more what's the word I'm looking for? Like give and take. And I don't want to say like, but more of just like an understanding of the direction at which the committee is going, because as I said, at the end of the day, we have to vote on it and then we have to do something with it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. You helped me work through what I was trying to say. So I think that for me, that's been my biggest issue is the lack of what's happening, where is this going, and then kind of getting it all and then feeling like, oh, and so I guess that's where from the process, from my perspective is, yes, I understand this is a community's work. However, at the end of the day, it is then in our hands. So we need to be a part of that in the sense of understanding where the community is and understanding the direction at which they're going, so that there is the buy-in on our level, so that when it gets to us, it's not we're now reworking or recreating the wheel. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you. Sorry, that wasn't a question, but I just formulated.
No, I understand. I do understand. There's no, it's a desire and an aim to try to find that right tension point, and then discussions around what that looks like. It's not designed to be done in a vault, but there is that, again, that larger overarching desire to try to create space. And so finding that is a discussion, and maybe there can be some means by which there can be some of those checkpoints that some of you had pointed to. It's not a taboo. It's just trying to make sure that we learn lessons where we have seen some teams. I'm not saying that it would happen in Cherry Hill. I've seen some teams where they have clearly been trying to fit into an expectation, and it has shaped the work.
Ms. Stern.
So, I think to Mrs. Gallagher's point and Mr. Mayor's point, I think this has been it can feel a little precarious for us as a board, and I think many of us have expressed that in our internal discussions. I think you naming Dr. Radford, just like that tension, tension is stressful. So, I want to just acknowledge, I think that's, it's been difficult. I think it's been helpful for me to hear from you, the rationale behind the process. I know for myself, that discomfort that Mr. Mayor described, a lot of that helped kind of resolve when we did have all of our in-depth committee discussions and, I think our internal small group conversations that many of us had about different aspects of what we received. I think the part for me about the concern, kind of the cautious tale of, being careful that there's not a perception of bias or over influence of the board on the community's process, which is the broad stakeholder process. I think there's some veracity to that. My understanding is Dr. Morton got some of that feedback about board member involvement. So, I think my big takeaway from tonight is, while there's tension in the process, this has followed the process that is the practice that you recommend. And ultimately, it's up to us to kind of, continue to do the work we started, I guess, really a few weeks ago when we got the full plan and then brought it to committees, and ultimately, make decisions about, do we trust the process? Ultimately, that's kind of where I distill it down to. I have a question that picks up on what Mrs. Trevane asked about kind of where we're at. And that is, and you mentioned you've done some technical work. I'm just going to say that I think many of us had the experience that there was not as much consistency in voice, languaging, efficiencies of wording and stuff. And I'm wondering, and we haven't, had a discussion since we had our committee meeting, but, here I would like to know or put out there that I'm hoping that you'll be stepping back in to assist with that. I think we all want to see a really easy to understand, approachable and concise final product, especially for what's kind of public facing, which was a part of our discussions. And then, kind of consistency throughout the document. And I think one thing we talked about, and this is, I know many of us experience this in other realms, it's really sometimes when you're just working on something again and again and again, it's really hard to kind of step back and see the whole document with you don't have fresh eyes. And granted, not that your team completely has fresh eyes, but but I think it'll be helpful to have you guys as an external group with that expertise and that experience that you had so many times before, bring that to us. So that's kind of, I guess, an ask, so to speak, of mine. And, I think it's just been very interesting. It's been challenging. I think for myself, I have a lot of questions about what's really a strategic, what's a long-term strategic plan and what's a, more, recent goal. I think Mrs. Winters asked about that or referenced that. So I think, I think everybody actually at this, who's been involved at this table, this was, except I'm not sure, but maybe Mrs. Sugars and, it is our first go around with this, all of us, at least directly involved to whatever degree. And I guess Dr. Morton was involved in a different role in previous iterations, but not at your level. So that in itself, I think has created again, it adds to the tension topic.
Sure.
So I just want to really kind of, I guess, and just name some of the things that I think that have been some of the internal dialogue and also at our committee meeting. But I mean, for me, this has honestly just really helped clear a lot up. And I feel much better about the process. I mean, I did a week
Good.
ago when we started having our meetings, but you know, it's weighty. I think to Mrs. Gallagher's point, this is a weighty, you know, I mean, we're not directly implementing it in the schools, but we have to oversee that it's being implemented. And I think it's weighty for that. And that's hard. So anyway, oh, thank you.
Just two quick points, I promise you, because I know that it's getting late, but I want to make sure that you know that we don't walk away. That is not, we're not here to come in, you know, run a few meetings and walk away. We're thought partners and technical partners throughout the process until it gets to its conclusion. And ideally, in looking at implementation, supporting implementation. So your ask is an easy yes. And it is part of that sort of final aspect of the work, which is just what you said. I didn't say what I used to teach. I used to teach English. I'm part of a team. The coherent voice and coherent tone and coherent grain size is a piece that we absolutely help with right up until the Dr. Morton and the team say no mas. We walk forward the plan to where the content is at a place where it's ready to be looked at by you all for your push and pull on it, so that the content is at a place where the community and the board are comfortable. And then the refinement of the language and the tone and the structure, those are pieces we're absolutely here for. And so it's our pleasure to help.
One more, Mr. Fain, and then I'm going to ask the board if we, because it's almost 8 o'clock and we have another conversation after this prior to getting to our second presentation. And I see our presenters in the audience looking at us. I know they're enjoying this.
Sorry.
But, immensely. I can tell Senora back there is enjoying this immensely. So Mrs. Sherfain, and then I'm going to ask board members to wrap up the process piece of this conversation so we can get to the next part.
Okay, I was gonna say we probably should have done the second, but I have another straightforward question. So hearing all of this, and again, thank you for the insight. It has cleared up a lot about the process, but now I would ask, what is your recommendation? So we just went through this whole process to give feedback, and it almost, for lack of a better way of putting it, almost feels like, what was the point of that? Because I don't want to make sure that I want to make sure that we're keeping the voice of all of the people that put all this work into it and not changing that based off of our feedback. So what is your recommendation now that we've given the feedback from our perspective, but if we're not necessarily supposed to be the ones that are directly influencing the document, where do we go from here? Because I feel like we all generally, from what I could gather from our feedback, thought that the content, with the high level content, was great. But then we started getting very granular with it, and we've had very extensive conversations about language and all of these pieces. So what do we do to ensure that we're not completely changing what work has been done now that we're just seeing this and supposed to give our feedback, which might be a little critical?
Right. So in terms of process, the recommendation we have is that it go back to each of the priorities has a lead and it has a small team that can, building by committee is challenging. And so to revise by committee above a certain size is not recommended. To have key players that represent those key voices in the room, but as led by and facilitated by district leaders who will own the work, that's our recommendation. To take the feedback that you all have provided and to be able to integrate that into the plan. I'd be shocked if it is really taken and changed the content entirely. I would be really surprised, but where there is key and substantive changes, those need to be incorporated by Dr. Morton and the leads with small teams. And so that's the next step. And we're happy to, at any point, again, serve as thought partners, critical partners to help to take a look at that content. And then it goes ultimately back to you all for your final approval. It's meant to be that both sides can gatekeep each other. It's not meant to be that there is neither the board nor the folks who have worked for district level or the committee level to build this plan, that that there be a one side has all the authority to say, this is the way the plan ought to look. There should be some tension. I know that's not comfortable all the time, but that is part of that deliberative process that gets to ideally a better plan. And our experience has shown that that kind of push and pull is really healthy and important. It forces people to dig in at depth. And however granular, there is great conversations that come from it and ultimately a better plan. But it needs to go back to the smaller subcommittees for each of the priorities with Dr. Morton's oversight of those leads and those members joining to be able to take your feedback and to revise it.
Thank you.
And then back to the board.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ratchford, for answering all of our 10 million questions. Board members, if you have
My
more
pleasure.
burning questions, I'm sure that we can send them through Dr. Morton, and they will be transmitted back to Hanover if there are things that we didn't get to in this conversation tonight. So thank you, Dr. Ratchford, for walking us through the process as we continue to move forward with this.
It's my pleasure, and please do anytime if you want me to return, or if there's any way I can help clarify anything that you haven't gotten to, don't hesitate to ask. I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right. Have a great night.
Good night. So, board members, at this point, there was a desire from several members to look at the vision, mission, and core values piece of the strategic plan. So we're going to move on to that portion of the discussion. Just so you know, because I just fielded a question about this, this conversation is going to be confined to just these pieces, because the conversation regarding strategic priorities will come later during committee reports, when each individual committee will report out on what the committee's worked on. So this conversation is confined just to those things. You all have a handout. Dr. Dreisen has it virtually in virtual land where he is in California. So I'm just going to kick off the conversation a little bit. I did a little bit of work on this afternoon to try to frame the conversation out, because I feel like it's a big discussion. And what I just did here was I underlined a bunch of words that are repeated throughout them, just to try to distill what it was that the working groups were trying to get at. So the things that stood out to me are the word community or communities appears 4 times in mission and vision. Passion appears several times. And I know there was a question that I fielded from Ms. Palmer around the purpose and passion. Is that repetitive? And I said, I think it's actually a callback to the previous version of this, where purpose and passion was something that the district understood as part of the goals process. So I think that's where that phrase came from. Excellence is repeated at least 3 times. And academic and educational. So those are the pieces I saw. What I saw when looking at the mission, vision, and values is I think the bones of it are good, but I also think in both the vision and mission, the second sentence reinforces what was previously said, but is also fairly repetitive. So I think what I would do if I were, as one individual board member, not to be directive, but what I was thinking was, if you guys generally agree that this is good bones, then maybe what we need to do is just revise a little bit to make it tighter. I think that would be where I would be coming from, but I'm willing to listen to what other members have to say based on that. And just so you know, the core values, the same thing. I actually thought the last sentence in mission, where it says empathy, integrity, engagement, and action, I thought that actually mapped to the core values fairly well. So I don't know. I know there was some kind of chatter out there about refining the core values down to maybe less of them. So I don't know if that's just sort of a suggestion of mine, but again, I'm just one member. So I'm going to see what everybody else thinks about that. Mr. Mayor.
Real briefly, I love the idea of deleting the second sentence of vision, because it is exactly along the lines of what I was thinking. Simply that it's fine, but it doesn't add anything. It doesn't need to be there. And if anything, I think the single sentence has a little more impact standing alone. That's my thoughts on that. Mission, I really didn't have any suggested revisions. Though, if you felt the same, as far as deleting the last sentence. No, no, I think it belongs in there, but
I just sort of reorganized it a little bit, but we can talk
Mhm.
about like specific wordsmithing and workshopping. I'm just trying to get
Okay.
a sense of the board. Is it like, we love these, we hate these, we think they're
Yeah.
pretty good, we just think it needs a little tightening?
let me finish. I had my only
ahead.
last point on core values, totally in alignment with all 5 of these. My only suggestion and request would be to think about changing the wording of the last one from perseverance to resilience.
I like that. Other suggestions, Mrs. Sherfain?
So I agree with what the sentiments that you were saying, that holistically on target. I would say for me personally, I was trying to Google some better words than whatever is about to come out of my mouth, but here goes. What I'm used to with this is that your vision, your overarching, long-term, broad vision, which is good, and then the mission is usually a statement. And I feel like this large paragraph is a lot, and there's not going to be a single person that's ever going to remember all of the words that are within that mission statement. And I think that when we do slim down, or whatever the discussion is, that we focus on something that's realistically memorable, so that you can enculturate that in the district and it's something that you can live by. So I agree that all of this stuff is fantastic, but if you go up to any teacher in this district and say, what is your mission? They're going to say, well, let me try to remember the 8 lines that I have for my mission. That's my biggest piece of feedback. And I think that all of these words are fantastic for core values, but I do think there needs to be consistency, and that words that we're using in some areas should be consistent throughout. So if we're using empathy should be throughout, integrity throughout, etc.
I actually thought, I don't mean to interrupt, but I circled engagement and action and linked them into empowerment and agency. I think I don't really have a preference on which way we go, but to your point, Mrs. Sherfain, our expression of that sentiment should be aligned and flow through, so that we're not using different words to name the same thing. Dr. Braddock, did you have something?
I had another, I don't want to complicate the core values, but another word that came to mind with the empowerment agency piece is autonomy. I think one of our responsibilities as a school district is to help students not just to be empowered, but to be empowered on their own in some cases. That said, I can see how empowerment and agency that could stand alone, but I would at least recommend or to think about the word autonomy if it's not too academic a word.
Thank you. Mr. Greenbaum?
Thank you. I'm very happy to hear some consistency among feedback from the board members. At least in my eyes, these core values ring true to, a lot of the feedback that we've heard about the strategic planning process. I'm certainly not in favor of material changing them. These are the values created by the broad and very diverse stakeholder groups that created these values that guided the rest of the process. But I think there seems to be consensus among board members to look at streamlining them. I really like that word consistency, reusing some of the same words. As Ms. Winters knows, I like to leverage AI for some simple tasks like this with just, you can go through it manually and look at it, but, ask it, identify things that are inconsistent, or how can you reword this to make it consistent? And looking at some of the suggestions that came back, some of the things that didn't read quite right, didn't say anything different, but I think kind of rang true a little bit more. Content wise, I'm on board with this. I think there's some opportunities to streamline it a little bit. And I'll say the same thing about core values. I don't necessarily think they should be changed. But are there ways that we can streamline them? Maybe fewer better. Maybe we want to stick with this list. I mean, it's a solid list. There are differences between even some of the related terms in here. But overall, I'm happy with what we have here. I think there are opportunities to streamline it for consistency and just better readability.
Dr. Dreisen?
Thank you, Mrs. Winters. I know I shared my feedback with all the board members in advance, so I really just want to build on this discussion. First, just reflecting on Dr. Ratchford's comments. I know we're spending time on this, and I just want to reiterate, I do think this is really important. I'll just speak for myself here, but based particularly on Dr. Ratchford's comments, I think when we get to goals and KPIs, I really do think that's more of the how, where just speaking for myself, I'm going to be very deferential to Dr. Morton and district staff, our subject matter experts, on, what we should be doing to achieve. I think where we can comment is on the mission, vision, core values, on the priorities as well. And so that's my mindset going into this work. As I shared with you previously, I do think, building on your comments, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Roscoff in particular and the whole district staff did an incredible job soliciting community input throughout this process. And what I heard from Dr. Ratchford was, that it does happen that things can be refined or evolved over time. So I do think it's important that we as a board try to reflect all of that community input in what we're thinking about. And so in particular, some of the feedback that came, when we think about the top themes from that community feedback, academic and lifelong learning, safety and well-being, that's not currently reflected in our core values. And I would also point out that our priority number one, that we'll get to later in committee reports, is around academic achievement. And right now, we don't have a core value that that relates to whether it's excellence or knowledge or wisdom or education, anything related to learning. And that is something that was a top theme in community feedback throughout this process. So I hope that we as a board would consider, incorporating all of that diverse feedback that we got throughout the process. The second thing I would do is build on Mr. Fain's comments around memorability. Best practice is for core values to be, fewer, typically 3 to 4. And just speaking for myself, I wouldn't be able to remember all of these core values. And I can, again, speaking for myself, when you work somewhere where you're part of a group that has clear and concise core values, they can really inspire and bring everyone together around a shared purpose. And so my recommendation would be that we try to make these a bit more concise and hopefully more memorable. And I've shared, potentially around mnemonics or such. And so that's where I am when I think Dr. Ratchford's comments, support, incorporating all of the community input into this core value process. And I'd encourage us to do that.
Back to you, Dr. Dreisen. Dr. Morton has a comment.
Yeah, just to clarify a bit. So I was more in the observational role as the stakeholder group worked through the workshop to develop these core values. But I think the thinking and developing these was that academic excellence, academic success is a product that we look for or an outcome. The core values themselves, they are behaviors that we embody and reflect on a daily basis that produce the product. So you think about the process-oriented behaviors that will ultimately lead to an outcome of academic achievement. So just two different ways I think that we're looking at this again.
Thank you. Ms. Stern.
So Mrs. Winters and I actually were in workshop 1. So we were part of that committee when, if we saw on the chart, bless you, the board was included in that one. And, it's, these core values are the exact words that were developed. We even have students here who are part of that as well. These are the exact words that came based on the other information that was brought to that group that came out of that group. I guess I'm a little, I also believe that being concise is important. I think memorability is really important. I'm trying to figure out how we get there without taking away from the sentiment from the feedback. And I think, to your point, Dr. Dreisen, I think, it's like, where are we going with students? I think that's such a good, like, why isn't, academic achievement, noted in here, for instance. But I think, because part of being in that group means we had a little visibility into the process. And the discussion was really about, what do we want to see our kids become? Right. We have the portrait of a graduate, it's all part of that work. What kind of human beings is our district trying to help shape? So, kids with, who have integrity, who empathic, who have agency, who act with equity and persevere. And I think that's actually, I have to say, I know resilience is a word we use a lot, but I actually recall that perseverance was actually the word that came to the top ultimately. So I guess I'm just trying to square, how do we stay true to that input for with core values of focusing on the human beings, that we are trying to influence from pre-K through 12 to be ready to go out in the world. Cause that was the conversation about like what, after here, how do they get ready? How do we want them to develop towards that end? So I don't know if it helps give any visibility and understanding of kind of what went on and where this derived. Regarding the other pieces, I definitely think, we want to get as concise as possible. I think taking out the second sentence makes complete sense. I don't have a lot of thoughts right now, but maybe that'll change on the mission. But I do think, I think we want it to be more concise overall for sure.
So let me just and then I'll get to you, Mr. Fain, I promise. So what I'm hearing is that we want a chance to maybe take a whack at these things and try to make them more concise and memorable. Maybe even try to get the mission down to a statement, like a mission statement for a reason, says Mr. Fain. But to Ms. Stern's point, to make sure that we retain some of the key concepts, which is why I did like the keyword underlining, because I was trying to figure out what are the keywords that are through this. I mean, I think that's kind of the next step. So I guess my ask would be that anybody who's a good wordsmith, I know Ms. Palmer has a journalism background, Mr. Mayor likes to write short and long things all the time. I love to do it. Anybody who wants to participate in that, can we try to hive mind this and take a whack at it and see if we can come up with something that we can all agree to? Can we do that work through the rest of this week and into the weekend? Because I think, to the point of what Hanover just said, it's really hard to do this right now in real time in committee. But if you guys wouldn't mind helping me workshop it, and we can see if we can come to some sort of a consensus with those values in mind, that we're making sure that we want to shrink it, make it clear, concise, and memorable, but also try not to lose some of the main things that the workshop did. Yes, Mr. Fain, and then Ms. Palmer.
I wanted to add to what Dr. Morton said, because I'm glad that you brought that up, Dr. Morton, that I think that it's important that, so all the core values stemmed from the work with the community and the expectations of our communities for our students. But I think it's important that we're focusing on the fact that our vision and our mission is focused on how we as Cherry Hill Schools are going to see that through fruition and build the children to be those people that the community are expecting. And I think that if we keep that in mind while we're creating, using the words and doing the fancy things you just said, I think that that's the important part of this, is that the mission is, how are we as a school district going to ensure that these are the students that we're creating? And this is our overall vision. Like it says, Cherry Hill Public Schools is committed, blah, 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 blah. Cherry Hill Public Schools will deliver. I think that's the piece that maybe we're confusing what the purpose of a vision and a mission are.
Dr. Morton, can I ask you for a favor? Can you email us the definitions that were given to the working group on what is a vision, what is a mission, just so that we have the same working definitions that they used when they were crafting these, so we know what the end is, what's our goal, what are we creating here? Ms. Palmer.
So I think in substance, the sentiment behind the draft mission, vision, core values is pretty spot on. I already started, kind of took the liberty of putting what we have on paper and whittling it down. I do think what's there now is a little repetitive, but we can refine it to pull out sort of those core messages in, a one sentence vision. I think your vision is your aspirational, what we want the district to be. I think the mission can be whittled down to a sentence or two about really what our core job is and what we want our deliverable to be. I think the core values are okay, and I understand where they came from. I do think there are quite a few of them, and I wonder if we can't identify some words that sort of encapsulate those a little more succinctly. That maybe not. I'm not there yet. Or even maybe to Dr. Dreisen's point, I went through and sort of turned them into. I took the idea and made them sort of short phrases that are just a little bit punchier, that might be a little more memorable. Might be too much. I'm one person. I don't know if the board as a whole would agree with that. But I think there's some room to do work, make it memorable, get it where we want it to be without sacrificing that sentiment. Because I appreciate the thought that went into it, and I get where it's coming from, but I think it could be refined.
Dr. Dreisen.
Thank you. In terms of process, this is a question. Is it possible to re-engage the stakeholder workshop, at least, even over email, to get their input based on this board discussion tonight? And for example, we could say, based on that discussion, if we just want something a bit more concise and memorable, I had suggested over email to all of you the mnemonic "We Are Cherry Hill," for example, with the core values being WEACH. Like maybe the stakeholder workshop, can continue their discussions and refine the core values to fit something that's reflective of our discussion. Because I think, as Dr. Ratchford mentioned, I don't think any of us here want to influence the process. That's not our goal. We're all, just trying to, contribute and support and make this the best thing possible. So I'd like it if we could re-engage with that workshop, just giving our input and seeing where, what the product could be.
So I think at this point, what I would recommend is that as a board, whoever's interested in taking a whack at this with me, we take a whack at it ourselves and see what we can do. And then we send that back through Dr. Morton to see what he and his team and the people who've been working on this think about what we came up with. And
So
with the knowledge and understanding that this is a conversation, it's not a directive. So we can workshop it and then send it back for another iteration, to your point, Dean. That way it's not us just imposing what we think, but making sure that we've got it right. Is everybody amenable to that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign myself the task of if we could put a deadline of Saturday evening on it. If any board member who wants to contribute to this process can send me by Saturday evening what they think a refinement would look like, and then I'll try to workshop that into something that we can all see. I can send that back out to the board to see. Once we have something that we are all aligned with, then I will forward that to Dr. Morton so that it can go through the next step. One more thing, Dr. Dreisen, then we are going to move on. We have another
just in terms of transparency there, I have shared with the board one example, and it's just an example, but it's something that would align with that mnemonic, "We Are Cherry Hill." And to be clear, it wasn't my ideas. What I tried to do was take the initial core values, build in the top themes from community feedback, and reflect that in a concise and memorable way with the "We Are Cherry Hill" mnemonic.
I appreciate that.
I welcome input from the board.
I think this is a good moment for all the board members to have a chance to take their own, to have their own take on it. Dr. Dreisen, we have yours. I'd like to see what everybody else thinks, and then we'll work on it together.
Thank you.
We can come on some kind of consensus. Are we good, team? We have the assignment? Excellent. Thank you. Not bad. All right. We are going to move on to presentation number 2. Thank you to our presenters for your patience with us. We appreciate you being here. So the second presentation tonight is the Climate Action and Sustainability Team Update. I see Dr. Morales here. And his team, I believe representatives from all different schools in the district.
Hello, good evening. Thank you all for having us here. I do want to, yes.
I just want to make sure the PowerPoint is up. Let me get this running for you, Al, and I'm going to introduce the team before we get started.
Okay.
Just to make sure we're good, everyone can see and everyone can hear me. I think Dr. Ratchford said it best when he said it's getting late. Some of our friends at the mic have, they report to work at 7 a.m. or earlier, so we want to make sure we can move quickly into their presentation. I won't talk much, but I do want to introduce our team. At the mic, of course, is Dr. Al Morales. He is the assistant principal at Rosa International Middle School. We have Miss Ning Nguyen, who is the assistant principal at Beck Middle School. Mr. Brian Grillo from our science department at High School West, and Miss Dana Pillagrippi, who is one of our elementary world language teachers, primarily stationed at A. Russell Knight. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Morales as soon as I remind our audience that the presentation tonight is based not coincidentally on a Board of Education goal, and one of those actionable items requires frequent board updates, making sure we hear from our schools about the progress they're making towards board goals, and really showcasing the amazing work that they've done around environmental responsibility. That work, of course, is not only memorialized in a Board of Ed goal, but also driven by the DOE and the state learning standards. Now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Morales, who's going to take us from 40,000 feet through the lens of our district cast team.
Okay. It's about time. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We are sorry.
So the first thing that I would like to say is I want to give not just a nod, but a shout out to Dr. Rood. In addition to the work that he did in helping with get the strategic plan started, he also was the person who really brought this forward. So I'd like to give him my personal and professional thanks for bringing that work forward. Our district cast is our climate action and sustainability team. It is a group of educators, community members, board member, and together we worked to develop take this idea of the goal itself on environmental responsibility, and then also looking at the New Jersey learning standards around climate change and create something meaningful. And so we created a 5-year climate action and sustainability plan that we presented to the C&I committee, which was well received and got a lot of nice, thoughtful questions with that. And so from that, the assembling of that group, we developed our vision and our mission. And so this is the vision and mission for the climate action and sustainability team. So as you can see, for our vision, what we wanted to do is to become a sustainability leader. So a climate action and sustainability leader throughout, not only through the state, but even beyond. That's our vision. So taking the spirit of what you were all talking about with regard to being aspirational, this is our aspiration. And to lead, and so with that, to also lead innovative educational opportunities for students pre-K to 12, and then also to create healthy learning environments for our students and throughout the community. And so with that, we went through a similar process that you all described in terms of developing the strategic plan as a district. We also looked at our values and developed the vision and mission based on that, and arrived at these 3 goals. So the first goal is around developing a climate action plan with the explicit purpose of achieving 50% greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 to net zero by 2050. And that mirrors state, national, and global goals. The second goal is around educating our students, our staff, and the community at large around issues dealing with climate change and the solutions therein. And then also creating those healthy school environments, both inside and out, that serve as both climate mitigation measures while also fostering a sense of wellness. And so the strategic plan starts 2025 to 2030. This is year zero. And so we did not wait until the plan was finished before we started our work. And so we're going to go through 4 different schools to represent some of the work that we have been engaged with here in year zero.
I'm happy to represent the elementary schools here at Russell Knight. That's my home school. We started this initiative a couple years ago. Miss Winters was part of my plant night when we did the seeds. So with this really, the kids were already used to environmental initiatives at the school. So this year I was able to work with the children on the green team. We have 18 children on the team in grades 4 and 5 between 11:30 and 1 o'clock every week that I'm in that school. And what we did was we made it student centered, meaning I did talk to the kids about the goals of the CAST team, but they're the ones that came up with the whole school initiatives to combat climate change. And we made it user friendly because these are children, but they were tasked with creating all of the presentations and all of the initiatives on their own. The first thing we did was we decided, how do we educate our peers? So the children created morning meetings and they practiced and they went and presented in their own homerooms, but also in the homerooms of their siblings. Or if they didn't have siblings, we assigned them to different homerooms. So the kids learned presentation skills. They also learned how to convince their peers. And they also did learn technology skills because they had to embed and create these morning meetings. And they had to be responsible to show up to the homerooms on time. So it's very exciting because the children in the school learned about different initiatives from their peers, not from their teachers necessarily. One of the things that we did was we went on a recycling campaign. We tried to teach the difference between what you throw in a trash can and what you throw in a recycling container in every classroom. And the kids, they brought in trash that was clean. So we talked about not just bringing in trash. So they brought in recycling that was clean. And then we played recycling games in the homerooms. That was very exciting. The other thing we did that we're going to actually implement before the school year is over is a no power half hour. I took this idea from Sharp School. The green team there does a no power hour, which I loved. We decided to ease in with the half hour since we had never done it. And the kids said, why should we do this? So they had to research, why should we turn off all of the power, including smart boards, for a half an hour every day? What can we do instead? So they went and gave presentations to all their peers. They're very excited about this. So everything you see up there, the kids created, I just edited it for spelling, let's say, but they're the ones that really had these ideas. And they're very proud of themselves for coming up with these initiatives. And it really takes them into a leadership role in the building. The last thing we do is we are definitely looking at this as outreach to the community because we're creating a garden. Now you could see we have our banner from the community garden from 2 years ago already, and we already have the one bin. We have already done our ordering and we're starting next week. The McNaughtons is going to be dropping off a whole bunch of stuff. So the kids are going to be planting the garden with sustainable products that can grow now between the end of the school year. And we're also going to test the soil for moisture. And we have other soil testers so we could bring science into it. And we partnered with the South Jersey Food Bank and we'll be going on a field trip where the children will learn how to make sustainable snacks. So we try to bring in, members and community partners strategically. Thanks.
So under the BEC CAS umbrella, we have the BEC Environmental Club and Science Club. The focus of the Environmental Club this year was to educate the students on plastic pollution, as it is considered the major pollution in the ocean at this time, and climate change. They've held multiple events this year, such as Trash to Treasure, as well as each advisory collecting the most amount of bottle caps, as you can see, and they use those bottle caps to actually create these structures that you can see on the slide. This project demonstrates that creatively to repurpose non-recyclable items such as that. Also, the Environmental Club created a presentation show during advisory for all our students about the Trex recycling program, where they convert plastic into lumber. These container bins are placed everywhere throughout the whole school. Every week, the members collect the plastic material, and then we transport it to a local supermarket who also participates in the Trex recycling system. Down in the picture below, you can see our Beck Science Club exploring environmental friendly ways to control mugwort, as it's considered an invasive species, and it's usually treated with harmful pesticides. So they actually used vinegar, soap, as well as Epsom salts, just to see if they could control mugwort, which they found it to be effective. However, only when they're at a young plant, not anything above 4 inches. Learning everything new day. And then established in 2024 is our Beck Garden Club. One of the goals for Beck Garden Club, besides learning gardening, is really aligns with our core values. As you can see the image right there, if that's not respect and compassion, I don't know what is. So they had decided to wanted to also improve our outdoor spaces. The advisor, as well as the students, come up with a plan of how to plan and improve the space. As you can see, they just created the plan, jumped right in literally, and then spring 2024, that is what it looked like then, and now this is what it currently looks like at 2025. Beyond this, I would say that the students and the staff has seen this daily and have been uplifted, that we want to expand it even further. That's why this past March, we were actually the recipient of the 2024 Sustainable Grant funded by the NJEA. I must say I have to give a shout out to one of our amazing science teachers, Jen Priscilla, because she was the leader in the grant process for us here. With the grant that we have received, we want to explore additional projects that will provide opportunities for social emotional learning for our students, as well as sustainable practices. In the center there, you see this is last year's growth of our lettuce that we have grown and harvested and donated to a local food pantry. And also this year, we are actually growing organic carrots, peppers, zucchini, cucumbers. And did I say carrots already? There's another one. Hold on. I can't, beans. This year, as well as with organic herbs planted by our students up there in the corner into seedlings, and also sprouting down below, as well as they has been transported to our raised garden beds at Beck, which I also want to give a shout out to our generous PTSA, because they donated 2 additional garden beds for us this year. Within that, we are setting up our pollinator garden, hoping to grow native plants, one from sowing directly into the soil, as well as purchasing plants from our local Springdale farms. Some, to name a few, is going to be our echinaceas, Joe Pie weed, and then bee palm. Right now, also, we reach out to families within the community, because this is truly a community effort, not just a school-wide effort, that they're going to help us maintain the gardens over the summer. So if you drive by Cropwell and drive back, and you'll see our amazing projects that we're working on. Thank you.
Okay, and then a little bit on Rosa, some of the work that we've been doing. So here you see images from our 3rd annual climate showcase. We had 36 7th grade students present their climate action projects. And we also have our CAST team, members from our student group, who also presented. Some of you were there. It was a great turnout. We had the Department of Education there, and some other local environmental groups present. So that was a great event. We had a lot of really great creative projects that came out of that. On the next slide, you see one of the things and similar to what you heard with A. Russell Knight, as our CAST team, we ask our students, what is it that you want to do? This is your club. This is what you want. And so what they wanted to do this year was to create these Blue Dot Ed sessions. So they are like TED Talks, made by students for students, and they're all around issues of the environment and climate. And what we did this year is we gave those TED Talks, those Blue Dot Ed talks, during our I&E periods. So students were presenting to students who volunteered to come and witness those. And then in addition to that, we went to Monmouth University. It was a student climate summit. While we were there, we were able to see presentations from other schools across the area, and had an opportunity for our students to talk with New Jersey's First Lady, Tammy Murphy, who was also in attendance. And so that was an exciting opportunity for our kids. And then finally, just about a week ago, we visited with Doug Ptolemy. Doug Ptolemy is a New York Times bestselling author, entomologist at the University of Delaware, and founder of an organization called Homegrown National Parks. The concept behind Homegrown National Parks is that if you took all of the yards throughout the United States and devoted half of those yards to native gardens, that would be larger than all of the national parks combined. And so we had the great opportunity to work side by side with him on a restoration project at the University of Delaware, where we looked for invasive species that he helped us to identify and pulled those invasive species to help give room and space for the native species that are part of that restoration project. And so that was the latest project.
Yes, I'm Mr. Grillo. I'm here just to talk very briefly about some of the fantastic things the kids at West are doing that align not only with climate, but as well as with the district goals. Every year, students at West participate in the research and science class. It's a really unique opportunity at West where students can investigate their own, really own question. They do a literature review, they develop their own procedure, order their own materials, and they present their findings at a science fair. Every year, we do really, really well. This year was no different. I want to give a shout out to the Cherry Hill Education Foundation. They were kind enough to award us a fairly large grant to purchase a qPCR machine, which is a really piece of equipment you're only going to see in the college level. We had 2 students that were able to use that piece of equipment this year and did really well. One student was looking at methanotrophs, which are really, really hard to grow, which is why we had to use DNA technology to identify them. And these methanotrophs actually eat up methane, which we know is a greenhouse gas. So her project was looking at how changes in land use, changes in how humans impact the land use, how that affects biodiversity, particularly with type 1 and type 2 methanotrophs, which was just a fantastic project. We're super excited that we were able to use the equipment that was donated, or I'm sorry, that we purchased with the grant. And then we also had a student that was looking at feral cat densities and how socioeconomic status and feral cat densities in Camden County affect individuals' exposure to toxoplasmosis, which we know is a parasite. And we were able to use our qPCR machine to do that, which was just, again, fantastic. Great class. Well, one of my favorite classes to teach. And I'm teaching this class for almost 8 years. And like I said, we've been awarded over $300,000 in scholarships, which is pretty incredible. Not only do the students at West, excel at the research class, we do have a small cast there as well. Climate action sustainability team and our AP environmental class. They generally tend to be kind of the same kids, as you can imagine. Every year the kids design and build their own aquaponics, where we merge hydroponic gardening with fish farming. That year we used Blue Nile tilapia and a myriad of vegetables that the kids got to choose from. I think we had 3 or 4 different designs. The kids love it. It's hands-on, it's engineering, it's environmental engineering, it's science. It's just a whole lot of fun. This year, the kids decided to shift from Blue Nile tilapia to freshwater shrimp, which is just entirely different. A little bit smaller, not as exciting in the tank, but they generate a lot less waste, which was nice. We had a hard time keeping up with the waste that the fish produced. Made my room smell odd, as you can imagine. And just in terms of what the AP Envi kids do and CAS students do, can you go back real quick, Dr. Brady, real quick? No, I'm sorry, you're fine. This year, we really leaned in ecosystem services. We had the students build bat boxes. Kevin Frost, who's his sustainable design class at West, built that bat box to the right as well. It's called the Rocket Box. Just leaning into ecosystem services. I think we forget that nature can fix a lot of our issues, a lot of our problems. We lean to pesticides and chemicals first, when really, if we take a step back and learn about what nature can do and what nature can handle, it makes it a whole lot easier for us, a whole lot cheaper. So we had students build 2 bat boxes to the right, and then the one Mr. Frost class built as well. And I believe Buildings and Grounds was kind enough to allow us to install or approve an installation of those bat boxes on campus, which I was excited to see. And then again, just more labs, and not necessarily labs, but more labs and more things that the kids in the AP class as well as CAS do. We are constantly out in the environment, looking at local air quality. We can see how air quality changes over time by identifying and studying lichen biodiversity. And then part of the CAS team this year, they want to participate in the June 8th event that we're hosting at West. Right. Yeah. Okay. He didn't mention that. I wasn't like, did I just tell them this and this isn't okay. So you're the first. The students are excited to take a look at solar carports. So they have the idea that they wanted to put together a presentation and look at a kind of cost benefit analysis feasibility study. What if we had solar carports on some of, if not all, the parking lots in all 16, 18 schools? What's the upfront cost? What's the cost saving? What's the carbon footprint saving? What does it look like? Is it possible? So it's something that they're real passionate about. I'm excited that they're going to kind of jump in really next week with the goal of having a presentation to present to the community and maybe even the board at the end of June.
All right, I appreciate not only your patience but your brevity, because I know that each of you are passionate about the work and can certainly talk for hours upon hours about all of the amazing things that are happening at our schools.
We're not done yet.
Dr. Morales is working out some comedic humor as well this evening. He's working out some new material. So I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to open it up to the board, as I'm sure they're going to have some questions for our team.
Thank you so much. And just before we move on, I want to let you know that anytime students want to come and bring presentations to us, board members are super excited. So definitely be in touch with that if that's something that you think they'd be interested in. Because we love to see them. They honestly make all of our meetings way more fun. So, Dr. Braddock.
Number one, thank you. This was very, very cool to see. And I have a very simple question, actually. I think it was the elementary school where you have the tech off for a half hour, which such a good idea. Such a good idea. The list in the upper right-hand corner, I forget what slide it was, but number 8 was STEM. So I'm curious, what ideas did they come up with that they don't use technology, but they were still doing STEM type things?
For elementary school, so what the kids did was they first drafted a letter to the principal to say why this is beneficial and how it could work in your technology classes, right?
Okay.
So, what we came up with is, one, we can schedule it during a time when the computer teacher isn't teaching. That's one thing the kids said. The other thing they talked about was doing hands-on things with learning. So, we use digital books now in Cherry Hill, this, like all of our curriculum's digital, but it doesn't have to be. So the kids came up with ways that the teachers can teach without using the smartboard, which, by the way, when I started in 1999, so I had a lot of ideas, but I'd let the kids come up with it. So that's how we got around it. So really, I didn't give the kids any ideas. I let them come up with the ideas, and they were very serious about the letter they wrote to Mr. Park. And to the teachers, because the teachers have to be on board as well. So the kids understood that they were being advocates. They weren't telling people we were doing it. We were introducing a new concept to the community and getting feedback, which I know, the board does all the time. The district does all the time. So we try to mirror that with the children.
Love it. I love it. Do they have Tinker Toys in an erector set by any chance? That could be stuff. Thank you.
Mr. Fain.
So my question is about the research that you're doing at Cherry Hill West. That is all really incredible. And I'm curious, a lot of the stuff that I know you got the grant for the PCR through CHEA, the actual research and the equipment and the materials that you're using, how is that being funded? Like, I'm thinking of sustainability for all of that work. So that's incredible. And I'm curious if you've had opportunities to reach out to neighboring colleges. Like, I know that Rutgers Camden does a lot of work with that stuff.
Yeah, no, the answer is we've reached out to, the toxoplasmosis, so the kit to actually identify and pick up the DNA is like $700. So we actually got it donated from a company out in the UK. So USeek is what the company's called, and they were happy to donate a whole kit for us. So we get donations. We have created some contacts with individuals at UPenn They were supposed to do some sequencing for us, which would be the next big CHEF grant would be sequencing. They kind of had a sequencing log jam and they couldn't sneak us in, but they've been a great help in terms of, we had to order primers. I had never gone online and ordered oligos before. So reaching out to someone who's a PhD who's done this with his eyes closed was really, really helpful. Dr. Burns, to his credit, he's fantastic. There's always money set aside for that class, and that's unique. So it's interesting. The kids put together their materials list and we go through line by line and we try to find the cheapest. We have to get really creative. We can't buy this, we can't get that, but we have this. Will this work? So in terms of the budget, it is part of the science budget. We use also, we just turn around and use a lot of lab equipment that we have in-house as well. So there's a laundry list of things that we have in the lab. It's a pretty incredible lab. I purchase things because I found eBay. eBay sells really expensive centrifuges for 1/8 of the price, and they still work. So I have this is being recorded, but I have a credit card that I use that my wife doesn't quite know about. It always comes up. So that's the research credit card. But that kind of answers your question. So I do reach out. We do have some contacts at UPenn and Drexel who've been helpful. They've allowed us to use their lab space in some instances, or really just provide guidance. This year we also got awarded, and I can't believe I forgot this, another grant from HHMI. So there's an individual, Kendall, who works at UPenn. She's a PhD student, and she was awarded a grant from HHMI to improve access to science curriculum and science experiences in the community. And she kind of found out who I was through a mutual friend, and she reached out and said, "Hey, I'd love to give you guys this grant. What do you do?" So she also gave us some grant money as well that we have kind of set aside for equipment that is, maybe something that we can't afford, or for some perishables.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't mean to put you on any kind of spot, especially with your wife, but
I'm sure I'll get a text message right now. No, I'm kidding.
The reason why I'm asking is I know you guys had to suffer through our strategic planning discussion, but and I would imagine you're probably not going to stay for the rest of it, but some of what we're talking about is opportunities through like outside or beyond high school and non-traditional routes or whatever. And when we talk about internships and all of this, I'm wondering how much can be funded in a mutually like beneficial way that we're maybe sending kids to see, because I can tell you Rutgers has a lot of fancy equipment that they love to show off and have people use. Yeah. And I wonder if like how many areas that we can dip into with some of our other goals and initiatives that could kind of benefit both projects.
I'm open to participate in any way that I can. Sure.
Yeah, that's really incredible. It's awesome to see all of that stuff that you guys are doing.
Ms. Palmer.
So first of all, I want to commend the work that all of you are doing. I think this presentation and the work that is taking place is just phenomenal. I think what I appreciate most about it is how much of it is student driven and age appropriate, right? But you're making students think and apply what they're learning in real world scenarios. And I love that. I think I wouldn't call it a pervasive narrative, but there is a narrative, right? That there is this lack of academic rigor. This shows very clearly that is not the case. And I think from elementary up through high school, where there is really sophisticated research taking place, I don't think enough of the community understands that work is happening. So well done. My only real question is, when can we come see that work in action? Please invite us if there are opportunities, because I'd love to see it. So thank you.
I will work with the team, and I'll make sure we involve Dr. Morton and Mrs. Viglietta. We'll see if there's not a way we can offer some opportunities for some board engagement to see some of the not just the things that were discussed this evening, but also, again, tip of the iceberg sort of presentation with all of the things happening in the 19 schools.
Every time I drive past back, I marvel at the gardens. So yes, board members love to be invited places to see things. So keep us in mind. It's such phenomenal work you're doing. Ms. Stern.
Just to start off, I also want to just thank you for your grace for being here so late and tolerating our very riveting. We find riveting our work earlier discussion about strategic planning. So first of all, I also you know, as we were going through all this, I keep, you know, all the themes of our goals and our, you know, our vision. You know, what's also nice tonight for me is to see what seems like your passion and enjoyment of this, which helps me think that perhaps there's a lot of benefit that happens for our teachers as well when you get to do these interesting and different types of projects, especially ones that seem to really connect to your own interest or perhaps something maybe you didn't know you were interested in. So excuse me. So it's nice, you know, staff wellness is really important. So I'm hoping that, you know, what's coming across is, you know, that I'm picking it up, you know, that this is also kind of feeding you guys as well. You know, 9 o'clock at night, I'm usually pretty tired by now. I'm completely lit up. So thank you. And oh boy, I think Mrs. Jerfain, I feel like you and I both kind of were like, wow, 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 wow. We just kept, it was phenomenal. I think the timing, as a mom of an AP environmental student who had their AP exam today, I think this is, you know, kind of such a window for me to just, you know, see and also connect back to when they didn't have these things in elementary school. My kids didn't, right? And so, or even middle school to the same degree. So it's really, you know, phenomenal. And I just, by the way, I have a huge thing of compost. If anybody needs any compost, I have a very large compost bin in my backyard. So let me know if you need compost. You know, I was thinking, gosh, I want to see all these things. And I was remembering that we were invited to the Rosa Climate Showcase. And I think Mrs. Winters
I did go.
You went, and
It was incredible.
I think, you know, sometimes it's like we get invited and it doesn't always compute to what it's going to really be like. And this is just, it's just from being on the board when we didn't even have any of this. And Dr. Morales and Dr. Rude, you guys were early, the early people to where it is now. It's just phenomenal. And I think to see what these kids are doing, to see how excited and engaged they are, and how, you know, what they're learning, you know, having a kid who didn't really get into any of this until he was a senior. So by the way, I have no idea how you're actually really engaging kids to keep learning and do projects at this time of the year. That's phenomenal and it's standalone in itself with high schoolers, by the way. But from experience I'm seeing at the end of the year with these kids, they're tired. So it's amazing. But you know, seeing how early we're starting and all of the areas that are really important to developing, you know, these human beings to go out into the world and be really ready to do amazing things. They're starting so early. I just can't say enough. I'm so grateful. So thank you.
I just want to comment on the peer-to-peer learning piece, which I think is amazing. I'm a Russell Knight parent, and my second grader came home excitedly and told me how the big kids came into his room and played games with him and taught him about the no power half hour, which now has to occur in my house as well. So thank you so much. But it's the peer-to-peer piece is phenomenal because I think it both empowers the older students and connects better with the younger kids. And then the fact that the kids can take that and then enact that at home. We have a pollinator garden in my backyard right now because my middle schooler. I mean, so I just want to reinforce that the things you guys are teaching, they blow past the boundaries of your classrooms and become part of the life that's lived in the community for the students. So thank you again for all the phenomenal work you do with our kids. Dr. Dreisen.
I'll be brief. I just want to reiterate all the positive regard. I had an opportunity to see at least a similar presentation in CNI. The one addition I'd make in terms of our compliments tonight is on the strength of the strategic plan that we just saw here. And in particular, how the goals build on each other year over year. And so in CNI, I did comment that, I mean, as a district-wide strategic plan, I hope we want to ensure that our strategic plan at least honors or incorporates or somehow this can align with that, because I think this is a great example for us as we're doing our own strategic plan work.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank
It was
All right, and
amazing.
I want to make sure, I know it's a school night, so I want to make sure that you guys have a chance. There is no obligation to remain in the room. I want to say that
No.
out loud
This is-
because I know you're all early risers.
You're
even though I'm
welcome to stay, but you are absolutely not required. It's all going to be on YouTube later. It's okay.
Thank you, team. I appreciate you guys. Well done.
Thank you. I just want to say, I mean, I'm definitely not the longest serving board member, but I've been here for a while, and it is so amazing to watch the vision of sustainability and what it's evolved into. We've been talking about it for so many years to see what it would look like, and I'm blown away about how incredible our students are. That was just so awesome. So, okay, we are going to move on to administrative reports. We have a project update from Mrs. Sugars.
And I'm going to do the very, very condensed version of this. Yes. So we had our weekly update last week, and just wanted to provide some updates on our projects. So I'm just going to show you some pictures of our APRs because they're kind of coming down the home stretch here. This is Johnson and Kingston. You can see in the Kingston pictures the logos on the wall pads. We also have logos going in the middle of the floors. At night, you can also see here the inside of that and the playground that's going in. Man, we have a really good shot of the logo here, and then some of the work outside. And then Barton and Sharp are definitely our two buildings that are the furthest, need the most work done. Sharp is probably the last in line, but I wanted you to see the nice red siding on Sharp. It's our only red sided building. So I just wanted to highlight that as well, but we're coming down the home stretch. And we are looking forward to being able to use these in the future. Moving on to Carusi, there are two phases that will be having work done this summer. We have a yellow phase and a blue phase, and I'm going to show you quickly the map of that so you can see which two phases of Carusi will be having work done. The yellow phase will need to be completed by the end of the summer so that students have access to the gym and the cafeteria and those things. The blue area is work that will continue through until the spring of 2026. So those are the two areas there. And in order to facilitate that work, we have our TCUs, which if you have not had a chance to stop over at Carusi, it's pretty impressive. We have our units there. I was in them yesterday. You wouldn't know you were even in a trailer. So they arrived over spring break and the installation process has started. This is a picture of one of them from the inside. And then I also wanted to show, it's not just plopping down a trailer. There's electrical installations that have to be done. There's sewer installations that have to be done. I mean, these are going to be fully functioning with full bathrooms, water fountains and everything else. So there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into setting up these TCUs. And then our preschool additions, we have walls and roofs. So that's a good sign as we are trying to get this work done in time for our little ones to arrive in January. So that project is moving right along. This is Malberg and this is Kilmer. So walls, roofs, all that good stuff. We're rocking and rolling with those two projects. And then finally, just, as you know, we just awarded a bunch of bids. So Rosa Middle School is underway. Cooper and Beck, we just awarded that. We also ordered the playground equipment for Cooper. Beck Middle School, we awarded that to Levy Construction renovations. That's going to include the front entrance area. West Stadium, the lighting and ADA accessibility, we awarded that to Marandino. And as we mentioned, that will finish off access completely around the building and lighting as well. And then this week we cut the purchase orders for Barton and Sharp. They were the two APRs that were doing the playground separately. So those have been ordered and those will be installed over the summer. And then as we start to plan for the future, critical HVAC, elementary school, security vestibules, we've started to intensify our conversations around those. Auditorium at East in 2026 and F-Wing at East and Auditorium in West. So we are, even though we haven't even started the work this summer, we're already planning for the next 2 summers. And then our financial update, we'll also provide this for the board at the end of the month. At this point, we have encumbered about 36% of our funding. We have encumbered about $130 million. We have about $234 million left to go. So just wanted to provide some information about that. Are there any questions?
Ms. Stern.
Brief comment. It's amazing to see APR rooms that are so beautiful, that look like the beautiful rooms we always used to say years ago. You'd walk into other school districts and see their beautiful rooms, and why don't ours look like that? Now I'm very excited to see that ours do look like that, and even better. So gorgeous, and just so exciting to see this work.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Sugars, for the update. Everybody's really excited.
Yep.
Moving on, correspondence. We're going to do it lightning round style, which means that if you attended something with another member and somebody else said it, you don't need to say it too. We all get credit. I'm going to start on this side with Ms. Palmer this time. I think I did that correctly for the first time ever. Go for it, Ms. Palmer.
Okay, so on April 30th, Mrs. Winters and I attended in the LMC Hub. LMC is the Labor Management Collaborative. It was a Cherry Hill hosted LMC members, school district representatives, and even a few board members from around the state. And it was really inspiring to see us held up as a model of where that is done really, really well. Mrs. Winters and I participated in a panel that really focused on, it was a case study panel that really focused on the benefits that we see from bringing together teachers, labor representatives, board members, the entire community in formulating policies and other decisions that we make, and just how that makes us a better, stronger district. So overall, really inspiring day. I was happy to be a part of it.
Thank you. Dr. Braddock.
I don't think we've announced yet, but on the second.
Star Games.
Star Games, yeah, the 2nd of May. Star Games, myself, Ms. Palmer, Ms. Winters, Superintendent Morton, Ms. Roscoff, a lot of people were at Star Games. It was fantastic. It was so cool to see everything. And Dr. Morton and I, we were mentioning how the Master of Ceremonies, I didn't catch her name, but she was an all-star at her job. She was fantastic. So whoever knows who she was, give her my biggest compliment. But it was a lot of fun.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Stern.
Ditto, but late in the day. And I looked through my phone. Sorry, I just looked through my calendar. I don't think that was all that it was. And if I did something else, it's not coming to mind. So pass along.
Ms. Sherfain.
So on Tuesday, May 6th, Dr. Dreisen and I had the privilege of attending the Our Community Salute ceremony, which honors high school graduates that are committing to the armed forces. We actually had the privilege of seeing the keynote speaker, which was the National Intelligence Director, Tulsi Gabbard, was there, which was pretty wild. She's also a veteran of the U.S. Army, so that was neat. And I wanted to make sure, because I did not bring this last year and have regretted it since that moment, but I brought this one this year. So I wanted to make sure that I recognized Shane DeVilka of Cherry Hill High School East, who has committed to the U.S. Air Force. So very exciting. It was a fantastic night. A lot of very important people, and the whole building was on lockdown because Tulsi Gabbard was there. But a lot of camaraderie, a lot of very happy parents, and it was incredibly exciting to see how excited everybody was about their future.
Thank you. Mr. Greenbaum.
Earlier this week, I joined Ms. Winters and Dr. Morton to attend Sharp PTA's meeting. And it was really great to meet with PTA members and parents face to face to hear what's going on at their school. We had an opportunity to respond to some of the questions that they had collected for us. One of the highlights, as Ms. Sugars just said, they want to know when they get their new APR, when the playground will be finished. In September, first day of school, both will be available. We also had some good discussions about academic achievement. and what supports are available, both now and how we prioritize those in the budget. And thank you very much to Sharp PTA for hosting us.
Thank you. Ms. Gallagher, correspondence?
Nothing.
Mr. Mayor
Nothing.
and Dr. Dreisen.
Thank you, Ms. Winters. I want to thank Mr. Fain because, as she noted, we went to this Our Community Salutes event. In addition to recognizing Shane, I just wanted to also recognize Dr. Kenneth Hartman. He was a former Cherry Hill Board of Education member, and it's just a great board story, I think, in that he asked, how do we recognize high school students who choose to enlist after graduation? And when he learned that there was nothing in place, noting that he's only one board member, he went around to all the other board members, got alignment. They decided to do something about it. And not just for Cherry Hill, this is now a national thing. And so I was just completely blown away, and really an inspirational story for, I think, an example of the impact that a board member can have. So I look forward to going to future year events as well. Also, to be brief, I attended a number of NGSBA events since our last board meeting. I'm excited to report that I've now completed all of the academy credits required for new board member certification. As I've stated previously, my goal is just to get everything done in advance of the annual workshop so that then I can get my certification at that time in October. So still have one county meeting and one regional professional development program, but then I'll be on my way.
Excellent. Congratulations, Dean. All right. Correspondence is done. We are moving on to first public comment. First public comment, there will be 2 opportunities for public comment this evening. The first public comment session is for board action items only, which are items 23 through 26. There will be another public comment section for any topic at the end of the meeting. If you are a student in the district, you may comment on any agenda item during this first public comment period. Please identify yourself as a student. That means if you're online, please put an S after your name. If you would like to speak now, please identify the agenda item and clearly state your name and municipality. We will alternate between speakers here in the room and those that are online. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. The timer on the screen will indicate the amount of time you have remaining. Public comment is an opportunity for members in the community to comment on matters relevant to the operations of Cherry Hill Public School District or within the authority of the Cherry Hill Board of Education. The board welcomes diverse opinions on relevant matters. Under established federal law governing reasonable restrictions on speech in public forums, statements which demean individual community members or groups or which are irrelevant to the operations of the school district or repetitious will not be permitted. Community members who would like to present information not relevant to the school district are always welcome to communicate directly to the district superintendent, board president, and all board members via email or other alternative means. As is custom, we start in the room. Is there anybody in the room who would like to comment on a board action item? Please state your name, your municipality, and the action item you are speaking on.
Hello, Rick Short, Cherry Hill, action item 25.5. In reference to the appointment of Sarah, this is a tough one, Brzezinski and Henry Nadio. I think the board, I think everyone in this room should be embarrassed for the hourly pay of these substitutes and teacher level 2 SAC. You're at $16 an hour. I know Target pays more than that per hour to start. I'm pretty sure Walmart pays more than that to start. And then you get into places like supermarkets like ShopRite and Whole Goods and all these other places. And you're telling me you're paying people $16 an hour and $17 an hour, and you talk about effective collaboration? Effective collaboration and this new school grant we have now for $120,000 that we need. This is, folks, this is just common sense. Again, I can't believe that we're not at a starting salary of like, I don't know, $20 an hour at least. How can anyone live on $16 an hour? This is just preposterous. And the board, I hope you speak up. How do you expect to keep good teacher's aides, paying them $16 or $17 an hour. Unless I'm mistaken, unless these are just students. I mean, I don't know. Even a student, again, can make more at ShopRite and Walmart. I definitely know they can make more than Target, but how do you allow this? How is this okay? Effective collaboration. I don't think it's working too good in this situation. It's sad.
Thank you for your comment. Going to the line. There's a phone number ending in 891. It's your turn. Please unmute, give us your name, municipality, and the action item you're speaking on.
My name is Jeff Potterwitz. I live in Cherry Hill. Now, this is part of the organization agenda, which I suppose you're bringing part, which is part of the work session, which I
Dr.
suppose you're reading.
Dr. Potterwitz,
Yeah.
we're not voting
Okay,
on the organization tonight, so that would be for second public comment if you'd
Okay.
like to comment on that.
Okay, no problem. That's great. So you either do it next meeting is what you're saying.
Right. This week it's on the work session. So next time it'll be an action item.
Fine, no problem. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Potowitz. We appreciate you calling in. Going back to the room, is there anyone who would like to speak on an action item? Seeing none, I'm going back to the line. I see Laura Ann's iPad. Please unmute, state your name, municipality, and the action item you're speaking on.
Ann Einhorn, Cherry Hill. 25.2, the retirement of Michelle Dara at Kingston Elementary School. Michelle, thank you for all that you've done for the students and the staff at that school. I know that you'll be sorely missed, but I wish you well on your next endeavors. Also, 25.1, Susan Mark, retiring at Rosa as their music teacher. I have known Susan forever and her lovely husband, Jim. They have been great mentors to my son, who is in the music education field himself. So I wish you all the best. Make sure that Jim stays on his boat this summer, because I want you to have an easy transition into retirement. And I only wish you everything that is good. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comment. Going back to the room, is there anyone who would like to speak on an agenda item? Seeing no takers. I'm going back online. I do not see any hands raised online, so I am going to close first public comment and move on to our board work session. We have at item 11 our organization agenda. Mrs. Sugars, can you please review the organization agenda for the board?
Yes, so board members who have been with us for a while, you'll recognize this as something that we do every May for our new board members. This is kind of a throwback to when budget vote and board member elections were in April. After that process, boards would have a reorganization, which would be in preparation for the following school year. So we are not going to vote on these items tonight. They're just on the board work session for your review. I reviewed them with the BNF committee last week, really just setting up appointments for various positions. We have personnel appointments that we make with people within the district. We have reaffirmation of policies and procedures. We have our bank accounts and their signatories, our tax receipt schedule, and some of those kinds of things. You'll also see a few things under the BNF agenda that we will vote on next time as well. Just wanted to make you aware of it. If you have any questions, you can submit those questions about what these are, but this is pretty standard practice for us. Just wanted to make you aware of it. I know some of them are in flux because of changes in personnel that will be addressed by the last meeting in May. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you so much, Mrs. Sugars. And again, if board members do have questions, you can email them, and these will not be voted on until our second May meeting. So you have a little bit of time on that. Moving forward, we are now going to do committee reports. Committee reports are going to be a little bit different tonight because we're going to be focusing on the committee meetings that had the strategic planning priorities in them. Board members, there are full notes from those committee meetings available for you to review in SharePoint. So I would ask that for the purposes of the public meeting that we keep our comments brief. If board members have additional detailed questions, please feel free to contact the committee chair of the committee And they can clarify for you if you don't have enough information to understand what was done in each committee. So I hope that's acceptable to everybody looking at the time and the need to move this along. I see Ms. Gallagher fading over there. I know. So I'm going to go first. C and I met and we had strategic planning priority number 1, which is, drumroll, academic achievement and outcomes. It was a really good meeting. We worked a process that was repeated in all 5 committees for consistency, where we tried to pull from the board member feedback that was given and that Ms. Gallagher so graciously organized for us as governance chair into documents where you could see everybody's feedback. Oh, I'm sorry, into a process by which we could find the consensus points. So the idea was to not have individual members give their individual feedback, but instead for board members to look broadly at what was said by the board and try to see where there was consensus to bring forward. So I'm just going to go over a few of the main consensus points. Overall, I felt that the committee and committee members, you can contradict me if I'm representing it wrong, they were broadly supportive of the first priority. We felt like it was reflective of what the board sees for the future of the district. We just had a few comments and a few questions. We asked about the inclusion of special education specifically called out in that priority. We understood it was mentioned as part of the subgroups, but we had a desire, we thought the board had a desire to see that reflective. We kind of sent that question over to the special education committee for their consideration as well, since they were working on that specifically. We talked about district benchmarks. There seems to be a lot of confusion about what are district benchmarks, how they're used. There seems to be a little bit of a change since with the new change in administration about district benchmarks. So that was discussed. Board members, you received additional information from Dr. Morton in the Friday memo that was requested by the committee to illuminate that for board members who had questions. We talked about the experiential learning opportunities as a huge strength. A majority of board members felt that that was a key strength of the strategic planning priority in having that be part of our 5-year plan going forward. And there were a couple of other small suggestions, and then we went through a process by which we went through some of the more specific language items and came to consensus on how we thought they could be changed. We had a lot of call outs, as Ms. Stern said, about consistency throughout the document in language, but that was sort of the overview of what CNI did. Again, I did it's kind of a 2-page deep dive into all of our reasoning. If anybody's interested and can't sleep at night, they're willing to go in and read that. I think CNI is the most exciting committee, but does anybody have any questions for the meeting? All right, Ms. Gallagher.
I just have a quick comment. Looking at the notes, I'm all for the idea of creating a glossary of terms for reference, because there were a handful of times that I was like, well, what does that mean? You know, like how do you define programs? How do you define? So I do like that idea, so that anybody who reads the documents can say, okay, well, what is that? And then there's a glossary for reference. So
that came out of the larger conversation in CNI, which I thought was actually the best part of the meeting about who is this document for, which kind of came out when we were speaking with Hanover, because the committee members were saying that we were reading it with a community lens, but Dr. Morton envisioned it as a blueprint for administration staff to really look at as a more technical document. So we were talking about ways to bridge that, whether it's, a separate communication piece to the community, whether it's a glossary to define terms, whether there's lots of different ideas about how to make sure that it's both technical enough to be useful for the practitioners who are the experts to use it going forward, but also accessible for community members. So I actually thought that was the best thing that came out of the CNI discussion. Mr. Fain, did you have something to add?
I was just going to say that essentially what you just said, but the whole purpose of that was so that we were maintaining a document that was very specific and had a lot of detail to give direction to the district. But at the same time, we discussed how that's going to look public facing, which I think could be standard through all of the stuff that everybody talks about tonight, is that what we'll put on the website and wherever else we put this might look a little bit different than the document that we're currently working on.
Any other questions for CNI? All right, wonderful. Then we are going to move along to priority 2, which is operational excellence, which went to the BNF committee.
Thank you, Ms. Winters. So in BNF, we discussed strategic plan priority 2, operational excellence. And this one is a little bit shorter, and it consisted of 2 aims: balance operational priorities with fiscal capacity and responsibility, and maintain and enhance school and district infrastructure. Thought I'd share some of the common themes that came from feedback from all of the committee members. There's strong support for including fiscal responsibility as a specific goal. It's always implicitly part of everything we do, but explicitly calling it out communicates it as a priority and drives accountability. There's a desire for more specific and measurable key performance indicators with a focus on factors that are within our control. There's a desire to find new ways to engage with the community and to connect with new and more people. That was a common theme across, I think, all of the priorities, but some really good discussion there on how we do that. Support for improved communication around budget and operations, things like the videos that we put out this year, incorporated into our dashboards on our website, and making information accessible publicly in a way that is understandable and digestible. There's strong support for a continued focus on preventative maintenance, maintaining our buildings and facilities so we don't end up where we did before, where we needed to pass a bond to fix everything. A number of people wanted to include something about responsible oversight and successful completion of bond construction projects. And then lastly, a desire to include elementary redistricting and budget and operational factors around that, since that's something we will absolutely be heading into in the next 5 years. And with that, are there any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you to team. Dr. Dreisen, did you have a question?
I apologize. I didn't see you on Zoom there. Dr. Dreisen.
I did not have any question.
Oh,
sorry. We are switching back and forth between the agenda and your screen. So if we don't see you, just,
no, I appreciate you
frantically or interrupt us.
But I appreciate Mr. Greenbaum's update.
Yep, no worries. I appreciate you making time to dial in even while away, and I didn't want to miss it if you had a question or something to contribute. So thank you.
All right, I am going to exercise my authority here as chair for a minute, and I'm going to actually keep us going, but in the order of strategic plan priorities. So I am going to move agenda item 28.2 to be next, which is the Special Education Committee's meeting report, which would be on priority number 3, which is student support. Ms. Stern, I hope that you saw my email that I was about to call that audible.
So Mrs. Winters, I did, but when you said you're up next, I was going with HR. So, but I'm ready. I'm ready with, I think I'm ready with special education, which I'm sorry, I'm ready with priority 3, and I'm going to combine the report of priority 3, the committee meeting, with also a first time ever, our special education committee report out, which I'm hoping, I haven't checked recently. I'm hoping Miss Mallory is online because she was going to help me with that as well. So I'll kick it off and then we'll go from there. So we did discuss at priority 3, which essentially focused on multi-tiered system of support. And the general feedback from the entire, I would say the entire board, was why isn't special ed included in, it seems like it would belong here, but not just belong here, but belong throughout the document, belong in CNI. So, trying to kind of sort out where it would best belong to. So that was the conversation. Also going to, I'm sorry, just bear with me while I'm pulling it up because I want to make sure I represent everything. So we, sorry, I should have, I was ready for it. I swear I was ready for it. It's okay. Let me just pull this up real quick. It's not there. I'm in the wrong place. Sorry. Navigating. Sometimes people, we get a little confused about where our stuff is. Okay. It's on confidential. Yeah. And strategic planning. Sorry.
I'm also here. Ms. Stern.
Oh, thank you. You might have to rescue me.
I will. I gotcha.
So I'm okay. It's the wrong one.
Do you want me to just go over the highlights that we discussed?
I would be very grateful if you
Okay.
were. If you
So-
would. Thank you.
So part of what we discussed at our meeting, and we're working on specific language to incorporate into the strategic plan related to special education, but we discussed incorporating the fact that we're moving from a model where special education is not program driven, but rather IEP driven, so that more students will be able to remain in their home schools. That's something that we've talked about a lot as part of our committee and part of our work with CPAG and CHSEPTA, and a lot of our community members have expressed that to be a priority. So we're looking to integrate that. Additionally, we are looking to provide more inclusive opportunities for students throughout the district in a more of a cohesive model among our elementary schools and our middle schools and our high schools. We are going to mention there's going to be language that's aligned to our district goal of transition and communicating and preparing staff with professional development, specifically that will lend itself to how to transition students between buildings and between levels, students with IEPs. The other thing, I'm just looking to see, make sure I have my notes in front of me. So looking to include it across all the priorities, and then reference special education and additionally historically disadvantaged groups, improve building level understanding, including building principles of inclusion and special education populations, specifically neurodivergent students. That seems to be an area that we can focus on. There's been work done this year with professional development in specific schools. But our goal is to have the entire district receive that training. And then additionally, we would have the entire district general education staff as well receive verbal de-escalation safety care training, so that the district as a whole has an understanding of the verbal de-escalation piece of our safety care model that we utilize in special education. And then we talked about communication with special education staff and families and child study team, specific training moving forward for child study team members to empower them to have conversations with families, have discussions at meetings, and overall support their needs as case managers, to have more consistent communication across the district, with a focus on, improving delivery of messages, discussion of programs, and also determining what areas of need that they feel would help them benefit from having better communication with families. And just checking. And then we also talked about the final thing was post-secondary transitions with a focus on talking about it as early as 10th grade in IEP meetings and discussing the options for students as it relates to supports, students who may or may not be interested in furthering their education after high school, and what opportunities we can work with through either DVR or local colleges to kind of educate our staff on the process and also educate students and their families. Did I miss anything, Ms. Stern?
That was extremely comprehensive, Miss Mallory.
Okay.
I'll add in two tiny little things that I think stuck out for me, if that's okay.
Sure.
Just the last piece you were just talking about with the, working with the high school students for and their families in the IEP meetings for the post-secondary transitions. We also talked about including a little more training for our guidance counselors who are also part of that process.
Yep.
So I thought I'd add that in. And then just, this is a small detail, but we did talk about with the kind of customer service delivery communication with families and students experience, that that may actually belong in priority 4, which is climate and family engagement. So that's a way to maybe bring specifically the focus of special education into that priority, as we're talking about, again, kind of integrating special education throughout the plan. So
yes,
but excellent. I think I just really want to thank you for that meeting as well as the other meeting, which I'll share a little bit on, and again, you'll definitely add in as well, which is, I think, I thought it was a fantastic special education meeting, a meeting on priority 3, and also this special education committee meetings. I think very engaged so appreciate the energy and effort and openness, a true collaboration. So I just want to thank the members and the administration for that. So I cannot tell you what it feels like to go home from one of those meetings, knowing that this is such a focus and that, we've been building on this, and we're just full steam ahead with really working to look closely at how we can meet the needs, and find ways to improve the experience of our special education students and their families. So, very, very rewarding to be part of that, and I'm very grateful for that, truly, and for all your work, Miss Mallory. Really powerful.
Thank you. And I just want to say our department always appreciates the support of the board and prioritizing special education, as well as it's stranded through pretty much everything that decisions are made across the district. So we definitely always have a seat at the table, and that we're grateful for that.
Absolutely. So I'm going to take a liberty and just add a little bit to this specifically about our meeting, which was, we had a couple of weeks ago, actually, and we are having another one at the end of the month. So a lot of focus. Miss Mallory spoke about really a truly visionary shift in our district for IEP driven services rather than building program based. Which there's a lot of moving parts to that, but that's really it's a really important shift. And year over year, we've been moving in that direction, but now I think we're kind of really getting into the heart of that shifting. So I think it will only benefit our students, not just our special education students, all of our students and families, to having more of that inclusion model throughout the district. We are also looking at that in terms of, as other areas that it affects, where our classrooms placed. When we look at redistricting, how's that, how is special ed going to fit into that, especially when we're shifting that model. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about was a big focus is also the special education parent advisory group. This is something that was started a few years ago, but has had a little kind of fits and starts, trouble getting off, really getting momentum. This year, it's just full steam ahead. And they actually, Miss Mallory reported on the meeting that they had for CPAG meeting. And Miss Mallory, I think you said there were like 40 people there, which was a huge showing. Lots of energy, lots of positive ideas coming forward from that group. And again, that group, their focus is advising from a family parent perspective and a teacher administrator perspective in order to improve services, which is different from advocating, which is more the role of the Cherry Hill Special Education PTA. Their role is more like advocating. So really kind of understanding the difference. Miss Mallory has uploaded quite a few documents in our shared file about this. So if you're interested in looking through that, including the presentation from that meeting. And there's going to be on May 21st, there's going to be a parent workshop, which I'm excited I'm going to, and we're all invited to. I want to make sure that I say it properly now that
yeah, and I'll just add.
You want to talk about that, Miss Mallory?
Yeah,
I think
sure.
you'll be better about it than I will.
I saw that many of our principals, I'm gonna have them keep it in their Sunday broadcast to parents, had the flyer with the QR code. We're asking that parents RSVP so we know how many people to expect. But it will be on May 21st at Lewis, and it will focus on supporting families with preparing their students for transitions at home. It will be presented by our 2 district BCBAs. And then we will also record the session and post it on our website, as well as a link for questions directly to the BCBAs as a follow-up to viewing the presentation or participating in the presentation. And We have some staff signed up already. We also, I just wanted to mention, as far as the CPAG, we have a staff representative from almost all of the buildings at this point, as well as a parent representative. So it was nice to have that meeting with them and have representation at the building level as well. On our CPAG, we also had a community member that is going to participate on our CPAG. And if anybody's interested, they can certainly reach out to their child's building principal, and that we updated the website with information for CPAG as well. They can reach out to the email address on our website if they need more information about CPAG.
Thank you so much, Miss Mallory, for
Sure.
for all of that. That's it. That's everything. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Sherfane?
Questions?
So as far as priority 3 goes, was the discussion to add like a goal or something about?
Yes, it was actually to add an aim and a goal, right? For that, so we would have a separate one for MTSS and a separate one for
for special education.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we didn't touch on this, but we did talk about putting a little more meat on the bones for the MTSS. It's a little challenging because this is kind of our year 1 of implementation, but just having a little bit more detail and more measurements.
So I think I actually got to sit in on special education. It was kind of a both and, Ms. Sherfane. It was both to have a separate piece of priority 3 that is about special education specifically, but also the interweaving of special education throughout the rest of the plan, which is something I think a majority of board members were interested in. So a lot of good work coming out of that committee. Thank you so much, Ms. Stern. I am now going to again use my superpowers to move agenda item 28.1 to next, which is communications committee, because they discuss priority 4, which is climate and family engagement.
Thank you. So the Communications Committee is a newly formed committee to cover some of the areas previously included in the Strategic Planning Committee. It's still to be determined how often it'll meet and what topics will be discussed. But this month it was a vehicle for strategic plan discussion, and we discussed Strategic Plan Priority 4, climate and family engagement. And this priority had 4 aims: school and home partnership through collaboration, high quality programs and services, access to academic, mental health and behavioral supports, and physical and emotional safety. And some of the common themes here that were raised by committee members: there is strong support for improving family and community engagement. Again, a desire to find new ways to engage with the community and connect with new and more people. We have a very engaged community, and we need to start the conversation about how to improve upon this and make our efforts purposeful to drive engagement. We would like to see some baseline data to give context to some of the target metrics and the key performance indicators. We all thought this is a great opportunity for alignment with the existing communication plan that came out of the communications audit we did last year and those recommendations, and continue to build on it. There's a desire to see more robust and specific goals around safety and considerations for quantitative versus qualitative data. Most of our key performance indicators are quantitative, but in some areas it's more about improving things, how you feel more people are in favor of something or feel good about something. Sometimes qualitative goals are also appropriate. All were in favor of continuing and building on the State of the District reports. I'm sure most of us have seen the one that Dr. Morton did back in December, I believe, and looking to formalize the process and build on this, make sure it's able to be sent out to all community members, whether that's digital, hard copy, or both. But it was a nice way to summarize everything going on in the district, everything we've achieved, and something that we'd all like to see more of. And with that, are there any questions or comments on this priority? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on.
Thank you so much. And we're going to now get back on track with agenda item 19.1, which goes back to Ms. Stern for the the reconstituted Back Better Than Ever HR Committee report on strategic priority number 5, which is recruitment and retention of staff.
So it was nice to be back together. And I think we not only talked about strategic plan, but we were actually able to touch on a couple of HR items, which was helpful. And, I think we realized we probably should meet periodically and and not just, when it's a strategic plan thing. So I think, I want to really thank Mrs. Lieber also, again, as our liaison. One thing I think is really clear, and we were actually trying to kind of, how do we, emphasize this even in the goals and in the strategic plan is, the great care and and effort that our HR department goes through to really, care very much about, approaching hiring and retention, throughout the district with such, intentionality. We talked about the fact that, we have, recruitment strategies and how to improve, our success in hiring, qualified candidates, but, also discuss the fact that sometimes, it's struggling to do that. It has sometimes nothing to do with our efforts and, but has a lot to do with market conditions. So really, how do we, outline that? But overall, we're still trying to improve, reduce total number of our vacancies, especially in some of our harder to fill positions. We wanted to make sure, just made some adjustments to making sure kind of like the goal aligns with the aim. We talked about some language about, trying some new things. Sometimes, for instance, we talked about, growth opportunities for staff, internal staff, staff are already here. Sometimes it's challenging to find new ways to do those things when we have budgetary constraints, so that, you can plan and then we get hit with, a $7 million budget decrease. So, but overall, the focus was really on, really recruitment retention. We worked in LMC that had not been included in the goals. We wanted to make sure we'd work that in. And really the focus on, growth opportunities for internal staff. And also wanted to look at like just understanding where we're starting from in terms of retention, bless you, and and that's something that's being looked at. I don't know, I think Mrs. Lieber is also still on. I know she was here earlier, but if you are in, Mrs. Lieber, if you have anything to add in, please feel free. And thank you, by the way, for the your final properly formulated meeting minutes will be put into the folder. They're not there yet, but they'll put, my rough draft is in there, but here's what we put into there. So either Mrs. Lieber and or any committee members have anything to add in?
No. That was excellent. Thank you so much. It was fun to be back with HR.
Yeah. Any questions or comments real quick before we, board members? Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. We are now gonna.
Mrs. Winters?
Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Dreisen.
No problem. Here, just thank you, gratitude to all the committees for, tackling this work. I think it was a productive, efficient way to do it. I as we're a whole committee, a whole board right now, I just wanted to call out, I had shared this feedback previously. Maybe at some point we as a board want to consider the order of the priorities. We're referring to them right now as priority 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My thought, again, this is more polishing the strategic plan. First, we need to focus on content, but maybe the student and staff facing priorities should come before priority 2, which is, I think it certainly needs to be a priority and is important in terms of a strategic plan. I just wondered about the order. So I just wanted to call that out here.
Thank you. All right, now we are on to P&L. Mr. Mayor, a not strategic plan meeting.
A not strategic plan, yes. So because none of the strategic plan goals aligned particularly well with P&L. We had a pretty traditional P&L meeting. It was relatively lengthy, but primarily because the first policy that we discussed, which was 5111, is exceptionally dense. And we're going to continue to work on that. So we did not get through it. We got on maybe 1/3 of the way through at best. What we were doing is working to crosswalk suggested revisions from Strauss-Esme with what it currently exists. And there are really quite a few of them. So we got about 1/3 of the way through, and we will continue to work on that next week. And my goal will be to try and get through that entirely next week, so we don't have to, or next month, so we don't have to continue to come back to it. We also discussed policy 2363, which is we refer to it as student cell phone policy. Overall feedback has been excellent, that the policy is doing what we expected to do. However, it could use some changes, and as enacted, we knew this was the first step. And we would, if necessary, come back and take a look to see if anything needed to be changed, revised, tightened up, or even loosened up. And we have decided that, based upon the feedback that we got and Dr. Mahan received through staff and other administrators, that there is room here, and I think important for us to consider tightening some of the language, including specifically calling out smartphones and tightening it up even further at the K through 5 level, because there has been enough concern from staff members of some of the even our younger students that are using smartphones, and some of them are accidental, but they're still becoming distractions in the classroom. However, overall, again, it's working exceptionally well. But this is an opportunity for us to take a better look, and we're going to strengthen some of that language. We also discussed, and on for second reading would be 5701, which is academic integrity, 8441, care of injured and ill persons, and there are no additional changes to either of those. We will come back to a discussion of paid tuition for non-residents, but that's going to be part of either the tail of 5111 once we finish up the eligibility of resident and non-resident students, or that'll be a separate discussion thereafter. We all agreed it didn't make sense to have that discussion until after we finish 5111. So hopefully we will do that next month. And that's it. Mr. Champagne.
I'm reading through 8441, and I might be missing it because my eyes are kind of cross-eyed right now. But I'm curious if, I know last time we discussed this, I had mentioned maybe adding language around whether, like, if in the event a parent refuses emergency treatment, like what is supposed to happen in those circumstances. I don't know if that was discussed or not.
So that wasn't specifically discussed. What was discussed was, again, just ensuring that the policy was aligned with longstanding practice that staff members were not to transport an ill or injured student. We certainly can continue to have that discussion. We did not discuss that, or at least I don't recall the discussion. If there another member did, we can certainly take that back. There's no reason not to discuss it.
I think because that would actually probably, Dr. Morton, wouldn't that, if there was a refusal on a parent's part about it for any reason, when they're called to the school to come or take care of their child, that might require a different step. Am I correct? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I guess we'll have to circle back to Dr. Mahan. That sounds like, just to make sure that it's all the bases are covered. Oh,
I'm actually here. Good evening.
I'm not looking, I'm sorry.
It is a different form. We actually have a form that's included in the regulation. It is a waiver that parents have to sign off on, indicating that they are refusing medical treatment, and then they would be able to transport their child.
So, since there is because I knew that we had a procedure for that, is it not necessary to write it into policy somewhere so that to ensure that regulation is being followed? Might be is that a Paul question?
Yeah.
No, well, it certainly reinforces it, but it's not necessary to put it into the policy.
Okay.
Because policy is generally a broader guide. The regulation is what enforces or implements the detail. So it's sufficient if it's in the regulation.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Mahan and Dr. Moore.
All right, thank you, PNL, for all your work. last but definitely not least, Ms. Gallagher and the newly formed Small but Mighty Governance Committee.
Yes. Another non-priority committee this month. Ms. Palmer joined Dr. Dreisen and Mrs. Winters and me for May. I was like, what month is it? May's governance meeting. Yeah. And we decided to start tackling the topic of board member roles and responsibilities. And I think we did a pretty good job with the first draft. We discussed, so we did more than that. So we did roles, responsibilities, and we added expectations of board members. And we guided our list through some information through NJSBA, and their four tenets of being a board member is providing guidance through effective policy, ensuring the quality of instruction, overseeing the superintendent's performance, and maintaining effective communication. So we started with those tenets and we kind of expanded on them. So my plan is to, by the weekend, send out our rough draft to everybody on the board for feedback. And then we can just start working from there. It's a little bit different than the chair roles and responsibilities, because that was very tangible. Like, you need to do this by Friday, you need to do this by Monday. This is a bit more, it's more of a thought experiment. Yeah, so anybody's comments, additions, subtractions is welcome. So I will get that out, and then the governance committee will continue to refine our roles and responsibilities and expectations throughout the next couple of committee meetings. So any questions, comments? No? All right, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot of committee work, board members. It was a busy May. Thank you guys so much. It's actually really cool to see the committees functioning so well in so many committees. So we are now moving on to the action section where all the action is. I will lead it off. Superintendent recommends and I move the following. Item 23.1, resolution authorizing submission and acceptance of the 2025 Teacher Climate and Culture Innovation Grant. Do I have a second? Ms. Stern, are there any questions? Seeing no questions, Ms. Sugars, please open the voting.
Board members, you may cast your votes. We have a unanimous yes vote.
Thank you. Mr. Greenbaum, can you please move the BNF agenda?
Thank you. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. 24.1, approval of bill lists. 24.2, resolution authorizing the use of contracts with the interlocal purchasing system, cooperative purchasing system for vendors to provide goods and services. 24.3, resolution to approve the submission of an amendment to the 24-25 Title 1A budget. 24.4, donations. And we have a donation from Cherry Hill Educational Foundation to be used for travel expenses for DECA conferences at High School West. And a donation from Science for Society to be used for field trip and supplies for Science Department at High School East. Do I have a second? Dr. Braddock. Any questions? Seeing none, Ms. Sugars, please open the voting.
Board members, you may cast your votes.
Ms. Sugars, this is Dean Dreisen. I just have to recuse myself from the fourth bill list due to a conflict of interest. I recuse myself from anything with Beata. Thank you.
Mr. Sugar, similarly, I have to recuse myself from invoice to ESS to avoid a conflict of interest.
Mrs. Sugars, I'm just going to recuse myself altogether from bill list 4 because there are multiple items on there. So yes to the rest.
Okay, so we have 3 recusals. Dr. Dreisen on the fourth bill list for BIATA, Mr. Mayor for ESS on the bills list, and Mrs. Stern on bill list number 4. Other than that, we have a unanimous yes vote.
Thank you, Mrs. Sugars. Before moving on to the HR agenda, we need to give some new language for agenda item 25.10. So I'm going to read it out loud. This will be the action item we're voting on for 25.10. It is resolved that the Cherry Hill Board of Education authorizes its solicitor to submit the proposed employment contract with interim assistant superintendent, business board secretary Joanne Augustine, effective June 1, 2025, to the executive county superintendent for approval prior to the board's action to appoint Ms. Augustine and approve the contract. So that will be the new language we are voting on under 25.10. Mrs. Sherfain, can you move the HR agenda, please?
Sure. The superintendent recommends and I move the following: 25.1 termination of employment certificated, 25.2 termination of employment non-certificated, 25.3 appointment certificated, 25.4 appointments non-certificated, 25.5 assignment salary change non-certificated, 25.6 other compensation certificated, 25.7 contract renewals certificated, 25.8 contract renewals non-certificated, 25.9 contract renewals certificated, offer of employment, and 25.10 other motions. Do I have a second? Mr. Mayor, are there any questions? Ms. Stern?
I have a feeling Mrs. Winters and I might have the same comment. Well, I think we're both going to comment on the retirement of Mrs. Susan Mark. I'm just going to say will be sorely missed. I was very, very privileged to be able to have gotten to know her while one of my kids was very involved with music, instrumental music at Rosa. She is a force. This is a well-deserved retirement. She played it right. She had her husband retire first, waited a couple of years. That's the way you're supposed to do it, apparently. But she will be really missed. What she does with that music instrumental program at Rosa and the 100+ kids she has learning instruments and playing beautiful music it's something to behold. So she'll be sorely missed. I'm very sad to see her name on the list, but happy for her.
Thanks. Ms. Winters?
Also, Ms. Market Rosa, I can't express how amazing it's been to watch the resurrection and rebirth of the Rosa music program following the pandemic. I had a pandemic 6th grader enter Rosa and play his trumpet virtually online, and I watched and listened to what that sounded like. And I watched that program contract. And yet when I went to the winter concert, it was amazing to see how that program is now thriving and how inclusive that program is of all different kinds of students, all different kinds of learners up on stage. Ms. Mark, it is well-deserved, your retirement. I hope you enjoy every second of it with your husband. You have inspired generations of Cherry Hill students in music. My only request is please, somebody out there who's listening, take on the jazz showcase that's held at Rosa every year. It is one of my favorite events in the district. You get to see 5 jazz bands, all 3 middle schools and both high schools play in the round together. It's all of our jazz students in a supportive environment cheering each other on. It's such a beautiful testament to Ms. Mark and everything she's done. So Ms. Mark, enjoy it. I hope you get to relax this summer, but first you have to take all those kids to Hershey Park next week. So enjoy that too.
Any other questions? I just have one. Can you just clarify what exactly changed in 25.10?
I'm going to pitch that over to Mr. Green. I believe it's that we can't actually appoint the interim BA until we send her contract over to the county
That's
first.
it, exactly. We have to get county approval before we can make the appointment.
Okay, so it's to send it to the county.
Send it to the county.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
And then Mr. Green, just to clarify, once we send it to the county and it is approved, then the board will vote. Then the board will
Yes,
vote
then
on
the
it.
board will vote on it.
Okay, does that clarify, Mr.
Yes, thank
Fain?
you. I couldn't track where you were reading and keep up.
I
and
just
listen
read
and-
whatever people send me. to
Sure,
read.
I appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, Ms. Sugars, can you open the voting?
Board members, you may cast your votes. We have a unanimous yes vote.
Excellent. Mr. Mayor, can you please move the P&L agenda?
Sure. The superintendent recommends I move the following item: 26.1, approval of harassment, intimidation, bullying investigation decisions. Those are the ones that the board heard on April 29th of this year. Do I have a second? Mrs. Sherfain, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars, would you open the voting?
Board members, you may cast your votes. We have a unanimous yes vote.
Thank you. There are no governance items for action this evening. We're moving on to new business. Please recall that items 28.1 and 28.2 were transposed to earlier in the agenda so that we could do strategic planning all as a piece. Does any other new business need to be discussed tonight? Ms. Gallagher says no. Old business. Is there any old business to be discussed tonight? I don't see anyone raising their hands. So I'm going to move on to second public comment. This is the second public comment section, during which you may comment on any topic. If you would like to speak now, please clearly state your name and municipality. We will alternate between speakers here in the room and those that are online. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak, and the timer on the screen will indicate the amount of time you have remaining. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the community to comment on matters relevant to the operations of Cherry Hill Public School District or within the authority of the Cherry Hill Board of Education. The board welcomes diverse opinions on relevant matters. Under established federal law governing reasonable restrictions on speech in public forums, statements which demean individual community members or groups or which are irrelevant to the operations of the school district or repetitious will not be permitted. Community members who would like to present information not relevant to the school district are always welcome to communicate directly to the district superintendent, board president, and all board members via email or other alternative means. As is our custom, we will start in the room. Please approach the microphone and state your name and municipality.
Good evening. I'm Wally Batista Arias, and I serve as the co-chair of the Public Relations Committee for the Cherry Hill Education Association. On behalf of the entire CHEA membership, we would like to sincerely thank the Zone PTA Executive Board, especially the President, Candy Cummings, and the Executive Board of the Stockton PTA for their unwavering support of the teachers at Richard Stockton Elementary. In light of the recent disheartening criticism from a member of the Stockton community, your words and actions have affirmed what they already know, that Stockton teachers are exceptional educators, highly skilled, deeply committed, and tirelessly dedicated to the success and well-being of every student every single day. We are also deeply appreciative of our district administrators for standing with educators and reinforcing a culture where professionalism is respected, voices are heard, and the hard work of teachers is valued. Thank you for recognizing the heart and integrity of the work. Your partnership means more than we can say. We stand with Stockton. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Going online, I see a phone number ending in 891. Please unmute and give us your name and your municipality.
My name is Jeff Potowitz. I live in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. First, school funding. The way SFR works, except don't look at this year, 2/3 of the aid to special education is put in, is wealth equalized. As you know, our equalization aid is 0. It's cut. So what you could do is, and what you could lobby for, which no one seems to be doing, is that all special ed aid, none of it should be wealth equalized. That would help. And also it should be earmarked for students with IEPs and 504s. That's one way to help, but you're not going to do it. I've mentioned before. Maybe that's one way to get aid, because we're going to get slaughtered. All right, what you may want to read is, there was a discussion with Dr. Morton between Mrs. Sugars and Dr. Morton. It's on the YouTube video. It's about 15 minutes. Read it. It's really, really interesting. And the number she gives is interesting. Ms. Sugars happens to be correct. New Jersey does work backwards to calculate the local fair share, but you didn't explain what it meant. That's the issue. And what it really means, how they determine local fair share on a state level. This is a good way to look at the formula, the way the state looks at it. Statewide adequacy budget minus available equalization aid equals local fair share. Now, one thing that you didn't mention is this. You don't explain how come we have a very high local fair share when it's calculated as a tax rate. Cherry Hill's $210 million local fair share equals a 1.73 tax rate. Statewide is 1.49 is the statewide average. As a result, that's the difference between getting equalization aid and not getting equalization aid. Can you explain that to the public? Exactly what's going on now. All right? Local fair share, $210 million equals a 1.73 tax rate. 1.49% is the statewide average. Explain what this all means. You explained something at that meeting. Explain to people what that means, Ms. Sugars, because you're going to leave soon. So explain it. Anyway, I suggest everyone looks at that. And that's a good idea. IEP should be followed and programs should be followed. I don't understand the difference. Your kid has an IEP that needs to be followed and a program needs to be followed. Anyway, thank you. I didn't use my 3 minutes yet. I don't know. Hello?
You've got 6 seconds left, Dr. Potowitz. 4.
It's okay. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Dr. Potowitz, we always appreciate you when you call in. Thank you so much for calling in tonight. We appreciate your comments, especially on school finance. Going back to the room, is there anyone who would like to come to the mic? Please approach the mic and give us your name and municipality.
Sarah Jocelyn, I'm from Cherry Hill. First, I'd like to recognize that this is Asian American and Pacific Islander Month, which needs to be mentioned at this meeting. I also wanted to thank the group that came and spoke about the environmental and sustainability, because they emphasized not only was it local and US, but this is a global issue. And it's an example of teaching our children to be global citizens. And I appreciate that, because that is one of the specific aims that we have, or goals that we have as the Cherry Hill School District. We want them to be part of a global society and recognize it's beyond our local community, it's a global community. I did want to give feedback also. I thank you for reviewing and engaging in the strategic planning process. We've had some substantial changes versus the last 5-year goals, and that was part of the community feedback. So goal 1, definitely community feedback, and goal 2, that fiscal accountability, that is a community feedback. So I just want to emphasize that part. I did hear there were some questions about possibly changing the words. I don't know, but I will say that whack is what it is if we are Cherry Hill. I don't think we want to be that. Okay, so anyway, I do emphasize that if you're going to use some words that are not in the common use among the Cherry Hill community, and I will mention agency as one of those words. Yes, that glossary is needed, but please be clear in making sure that you've got the Cherry Hill community as one of your key stakeholders here, as one of the people that need to be able to clearly read the strategic goals, because they value and they did give you input in making sure that these were relevant for the community, the students, the staff, and of course the board. So I thank you all for the hard work that you have been doing to engage here. And we're looking for a beautiful set of goals that we're going to work with for the next 5 years. And thank you all.
Thank you so much for your comment. It's appreciated. Going back online, the next speaker is Candy Cummings. Please unmute, give us your name and municipality.
Hi, Candy Cummings, Cherry Hill, Chair of Zone PTA. I just want to take these few minutes in this public forum to express Zone PTA's full support of our Cherry Hill teachers. Our teachers are the heart and soul of our school community. They are dedicated professionals who are the driving force behind our students' success. Every day, they bring expertise, creativity, and a commitment to excellence in our classrooms. They challenge our children to think critically, push themselves, and grow, not just to meet the standards, but to exceed them. They know that true academic success goes hand in hand with building confidence, resilience, and a love of learning. They work tirelessly along with our educational assistants, paraprofessionals, and other building and district staff to support students at every level, helping each student reach their potential. Their efforts are evident in our school's achievements, in the progress our students make, and in the well-rounded young adults who leave our classrooms ready for the future. They consistently show up, not just in the classroom, but at games, concerts, art shows, and community events. They are mentors, role models, and strong partners in raising a generation of kind, capable, and confident young people. But our teachers don't do it alone. They foster a strong partnership with families, one built on communication, trust, and mutual respect. This bond is the foundation of student success, and it's something that Zone PTA is proud to continue to support and strengthen. So, in honor of Teacher Appreciation Week, which usually kind of turns into Teacher Appreciation Month, we thank you all for your tireless work, your heart, and your dedication. And thanks to the board for giving me the opportunity to thank them publicly.
Thank you for your comment. The next speaker, please approach the microphone, give us your name and your municipality.
Rick Short, Cherry Hill. Madam President, my first question is towards Ms. Winters. The question has to do with the APs. Do all the APs have line of sight with blue flashing lights? Because what I've seen at one is I'm not sure if they're all line of sight with blue flashing lights on the outside. So we spend millions and millions of dollars on these new AP rooms and we don't have line of sight with blue flashing lights. I hope we fix that. Second is a point of clarification from the last board meeting when Madam President, when Mr. Greenball said that I made incorrect statements. He claimed that the ADA was included in the bond. It was not. So the question is, will Mr. Greenball clarify that he was incorrect because this print was not in the bond? I can guarantee you that. Second thing is for accuracy, the presentation with the environmental. One of the things that was mentioned was that the goal was to have a 50% and something by 2025, a 0% impact. Folks, are we going to publish stuff that's unattainable? I don't think that's it. I don't think it's attainable because you would need to have electric boilers. So you currently have gas boilers. I don't see any way of getting 50%. So are we going to make correct statements? Also, how do you know a presentation is really good? The board kind of all fell in love with this presentation tonight, but yet again, I've mentioned this for over 4 years now. Have you read the New York City environmental report? It's over 364 pages long, goes into way deeper than what was presented tonight. Also, my notes here are having a little problem here with my notes. So if you're going to be the leader in the country, how do you even know what's the best? Got to say, New York City schools has the best climate presentation available. To follow up with with Kim, I forgot her last name. I'm sorry about that. Rutgers does have a landfill project. Maybe we could work with Rutgers. The other thing is the one which I was impressed was the West presentation for the high school, but does East have the same program going? because we always would like to have, I don't like this word, equity.
Thank you for your comments. Going back online, the next person is Bridge. Bridge, it's your turn. Please unmute.
Alana Yaris, Cherry Hill, Chair of the Fair Funding Committee, a subset of Zone PTA. The meetings are off this month, but the last fair funding meeting of the school year will be on Thursday, May 22nd. It's on Zoom, it's virtual. I'll say this meeting will be 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes because it's the last meeting until September. Help us plan all the behind the scenes work that we're doing over the summer to hit the ground running in September when we come back to school, so that we're not budget crunching again next year, and all of the fruits of our labor are out there. And if you know finance and school funding, I invite you to come and email fairfundingchps@gmail.com, and I'm happy to add you to the list. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Going back to the room, I don't see any more takers. Going back online, I don't see any hands raised, so I'm going to close second public comment and move to superintendent comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Winters. Just have a few comments. Thank you to all for your positive statements about our teachers and staff and the wonderful job that they do. Teachers appreciation and staff appreciation was last week, and by all accounts, there were amazing celebratory events that took place throughout the entire week. Tonight is reassuring and makes me feel that we recognize the value of our teachers and faculty and staff, and we will celebrate them ongoing all throughout the year. Just as a moment of reflection, as I've sat here for the past 5 hours and 20 minutes, 21 minutes. Yes. So last year, as I envisioned a strategic planning process and what that might look like for the district, the hope and the vision was this process that engaged the community and that excited the community, and that was a process that was able to include much community voice. So we've had over 4,000 people provide feedback to us. We've engaged in over 24 community discussion sessions. Many of the students certainly who are sitting in this room, and community members who were in the audience this evening participated at some point or another in either stakeholder workshop meetings or focus group meetings. Any of the administrative staff did the same as well to help to produce this document. And as I sat here this evening, I listened to the conversation. I read board feedback, participated in the committee meetings as well. We're doing it. We are doing exactly what the vision was, and it truly is tremendous for me to see the level of detail, thorough conversations, and engagement in this process. And like as what's been summarized, this document will guide our district and push us and propel us forward over the period of the next 5 years. So it deserves a heightened level of importance and attention and focus, and it's getting just that. So this is truly outstanding this evening. The only other thing I'd like to mention, Ms. Jocelyn, thank you very much for recognizing Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. We did put a posting up, Ms. Barati. Thank you for that. It is also Jewish American Heritage Month as well. And we like to recognize members of the Jewish community as well. And it is important that everyone has a sense of equity and they belong. So with that, I'll say thank you all for your patience this evening. Have a great night.
Thank you so much. I make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? So many takers. Mr. Mayor and our students, all in favor. Thank you so much. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.